If you had asked me, I don't know, 25 years ago, if you'd asked me, will Edgerrin James be in the Hall of Fame? I would have said he's got a shot. But if you had asked me 25 years ago, will Edgerrin James write a book? I would have said, I don't think he's going to have any interest in that whatsoever, because he didn't, there was something about fame, I don't know, that you didn't trust or that you didn't want so much. You wanted the things that football gave you, but not necessarily some of this stuff. So why write a book, Edge?
Well, you know, as you travel and as you go, as you travel this journey, you start looking back and you start to see all the people that you can inspire. I see so many guys that remind me of myself, and you don't get a chance to speak to them personally. You don't get a chance to see them physically. And the best way to kind of give off some insight or kind of spread the word is through a book. So I think it's best and I think it's appropriate.
And you want people to know some things that perhaps you didn't know to ask about when you were young, or did you see an absence? Do you want to impart some wisdoms to people that you wish you had?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's one of those things where you see guys going through things. And a lot of times you say, dang, I went through the same thing, or they're handling it the wrong way. And I say, man, you know what? Maybe if they take this approach, or maybe they take that approach that I've taken, and to inspire a lot of guys, because a lot of guys, you know, where we're coming from, nobody knows a personal author. Nobody knows anybody that actually wrote a book. And to actually be one that actually put a book out, I think that's just another layer to all the different things that I've accomplished, and also can inspire others to kind of do the same.
You were reluctant, I felt like, to tell your story. I remember that I sort of had to pry it out of you, and it's not like you were talking to a bunch of media members, right? You were trying to do the bare minimum. You wanted to stay in the shadows once upon a time.
Yeah, man, because everything was new to me. I didn't have somebody to kind of show me the way. So everything with me was trial and error. So I had to learn and figure things out, use my instincts, and the best thing to do is stay in my comfort zone at that time. You know, as you get a little older, you can say, okay, yeah, you know, maybe I could have said this or said it, but I never wanted to look back on some things and say, dang, I took the wrong approach there.
Are there some things that you look back in your playing days, Edge, and which wish you'd spoken up on, or maybe used the platform and not been hesitant or distrustful around the lights? The adult Edgerrin James would like to go back and say some things differently in public.
No, I think I handled it the right way, because, you know, I know what I was there for. I was there to play ball. You know, I was there to play sports, and that's what I enjoy, and that's what I love doing. And I never got away from the foundation of what I'm here for.
People don't understand what you come from, Edge. I've read the quotes where you say, I was an adult in middle school. I was a man in middle school.
Yeah, I don't think people really understand what certain people go through, and I think there's a lot of kids that's actually going through those things right now, where they're kind of thrust into a situation that they probably didn't want to be in, or they didn't really know they had to be in. And when you're thrown in those situations, you know, you gotta make them work. And that's what me. I was always making things work, but kind of going with a whole lot of trial and error and figuring it out as I go.
Can you explain to us what the transition was like for you? Because let's go back and tell the whole story autobiographically, right? You get to the University of Miami, and I believe I have this right, Edge. I'm doing it from memory. But at the time, you are uncommonly muscular, but were not a weightlifter, right? Largely in high school, you got that kind of size working on watermelon trucks, correct?
Yeah, I grew up in a Immokalee, and the thing to do for when you're young and you want to try to make some money, you go to the watermelon fields and try to. And my grandfather was a contractor, so he let me come out there at an early age, and I was probably the only child out there. And you get a chance to work and earn your own money, you know. And for me, getting to the University of Miami, you know, when I got there, I saw guys if they played well, or they said certain things to people would give them money. And I was like, damn, this pretty cool, because for me, I had to earn everything that I had. And those things right there started standing out. But it's like I was being prepared to be a man at an earlier age than everybody else.
Can you tell the audience, because you love Immokalee, and Immokalee is a hard place, and very nearby, among the things that you will find is sugarcane fields being burned down, rabbits running around, and people eating rabbits, chasing rabbits, famously, Anquan Bolden, people around the area. Can you explain to people why it is you love Immokalee the way that you do?
Well, the sugarcane part, that's a little bit away from us. That's over in Belle Glade, Clewiston area. But of Immokalee, Immokalee it's just a special place because it's a melting pot, but it's a melting pot of people that really don't have. And when you start looking at how hard the people work and how much energy people put into having these small things, you get a greater appreciation for things. And then once you leave Immokalee, you take that same appreciation for things and you look at the rest of the world and you say, man, this pretty easy. When I got to Miami, I'm like, this is pretty easy. I got a chance to do all these wonderful things and be in these nice situations, and you don't even really have to work that hard for them.
What do you remember about the transition that wasn't easy?
I don't look at nothing as hard. I don't look at nothing as hard. I never looked at anything as hard, because I've always had a great family support. Immokalee is on an hour away or so I've always had family and friends around. And football, the University of Miami was, the tight-knit group that we've always had. That made everything so much easier.
Edge, when and how did you fall in love with football?
Football is the thing to do, and with me, football it became natural for me, and plus it was easy for me. So and it's something that everybody else doing, and you get a chance to go out there and play amongst people that are 2-3 years older than you and be successful. I think that right there, those are the signs that say, hey, you know what, I got a chance to be really good at this. And football was something that gave me a chance to be myself. You go out there, you be a warrior, you got to be a gladiator, and you do all these things to I guess, kind of get to the other side, so to speak, when you're running the football. And that right there is always a joy in doing that, being able to outwill somebody.
Stugotz, you should know that Edge was saying that football was easy for him upon getting into the pros, that he was surprised that it was easy, that he would play after.
The speed didn't change?
Just that after games on Sunday, carrying 25 and 30 times, you'd go back to your house and pick up basketball, right? Because you weren't even having trouble with NFL Sundays, correct?
Yeah, at first, I guess because you have it in your mind that you're going to play this big time sport and it's going to be so tough. But then when you get there, you realize like it's the same game you've been playing since you were a child. You've done all the proper things to make sure that you're equipped and you're ready. And then when you get there, it's the same thing. So for us, I went and played football with all my friends at the house. I was young, 21, 22, had everybody at the house, and we just go play the game, and soon as the game over, we'll get back to the real game. That's the basketball game at the house, and that was the way we kind of treated it. We had fun with that.
Basketball game at the house after NFL Sundays, because I remember asking you all the time, like, why doesn't your body hurt? Why aren't you beat up? That probably later in life, right? Later in your professional career, there had to be some pain that came with it that made you less likely to do that, right? The Arizona days, you're not playing also basketball at the end of Sundays, are you?
As you get older, Father Time catches up with you. And for me, it was, your body starts telling you when, hey, you're not capable of doing these things. And the recovery takes a little bit longer once you get older. When you're young, you don't even realize you actually had a game. It didn't even feel like you played a game.
Do I have this wrong, or was there not a time when your friends were betting about whether or not you would show up for the Hall of Fame speech? Because that wasn't really your thing.
Well, it was more so was how it wasn't that I would show up. It was how short it would be. They had a bet on would it be 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, would it be the shortest in the history of the NFL. So that was the going thing. And then the other thing was they thought it was going to be a time they finally get to see Edge cry. And obviously, that's not happening.
Yes, this is not.
You crushed the speech, though, Ed. You really did.
Well, you not only.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You not only crushed the speech, though, Edge. If I could not have imagined, right? Because I don't know, you would have no reason to remember this, but I do remember at the University of Miami, your off-campus apartment, going to see you, and you were sort of reticent about being a public talker. You didn't really. just it wasn't interesting to you. To see you go from that to 25 years later, have command of an audience and confidence with everything you were saying, it was a marvel to see how much education you'd gotten. And I'm talking about all of it. I'm not just talking about school, Edge. I'm talking about all of it. Just a confidence to speak in front of people is not something that I had seen a quarter century earlier from you.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, amongst my peers, and, I don't have a problem with talking when I'm in my comfort zone, but I always want to make sure that I have my information. I love to read. I love to study. I like to make sure I have everything together. And over the years, I've just been collecting all that information and knowledge and putting myself in a situation to where I'm not getting out there making a fool of myself or getting out there just blurting things out. If I say something, I want it to be effective and I want it to be factual, so that it can actually carry on. It's not somewhere it's like Ed's just out here just talking. So I wanted to make sure whenever I do anything like that, I want to make sure it's done the right way.
Why was it so important for you to be authentic, Edge? Because I do remember when we did a magazine story together that you really wanted people to know unfiltered truth. You were going to cut through all the bullshit. Well,
I think that's what I think the world's ready for that, and I think I've always been on that because of the fact that it only makes sense. It's hard to put on to be something else, and then all of a sudden you go in front of a camera, you have to be something else. That's a conflict of interest, especially when you have people that are in your everyday life. They don't know if you're telling the truth or you're just saying things. And for me, I relate to so many normal people. A lot of times people look at us as celebrities and they put us on this pedestal, they put us in this kind of category when we're all human. And I think being yourself and being natural and being real, I think it's more appreciated, and it also inspires more to say, hey, you know what, this guy, he's just like us, and he was able to accomplish all these things, but doing it the right way.
If I asked you the most fun you ever had 1 year of playing football, any time along the path, what would be the year that you would point to?
Oh, man, I had so many fun years playing football, but the fun has had to be at the University of Miami. The University of Miami, when football was just fun. You're having fun, you're playing the game, and after the game, you don't have money, you don't have all those things. All you have is each other. That's when it really was fun, those years at the University of Miami. I think when you get to the pros, it really turns into business. It's a true business, and the benefits of the pros are the things that you're able to attain and the access you have to things. But you're talking about pure fun. It's at the University of Miami when you don't have money, you don't have all these things. All you have is each other. You have your wit. You have who you are as a person. That's what it really was about there.
Edgerrin James with us here. His new book, From Gold Teeth to Gold Jacket, My Life in Football and Business, is available February 8th. As a Hall of Famer, I've been dying to ask this question. David Baker, is he scary? Like, that man is a scary man, is he not?
Does he? Do you know him by name? Do you know him by name? Because I don't know if David Baker.
I just call him Baker. But
he's enormous.
The thing about it, when you see him, it's like, okay, it's like the football gods are here. That's how it is. Like, he shows up because only time you see him is when it's about that gold jacket. It's about Hall of Fame talk. And I think they did a great job of keeping him in that little box right there, so that when you see him, it's real. And I think anybody that plays football or anybody that really understands the game and want to go to the highest of the high, you'll know when Baker shows up, it's like, yeah, you've arrived.
Where is the gold jacket right now? Where is it?
It's in the box. I always keep it in the box that they send it to me in, and I'll pull it out whenever I need to, or whenever we have an event, or they say you bring the jacket out. But it's one of those things that you'll barely see it, but when you do see it, it's a moment.
Are you proud of anything in football above all else? Is there anything that gives you a great amount of pride where you're like, yeah, I'm pretty impressed with myself there. I'm happy I was able to do blank.
My children. I'm very proud of that, and like right now I have 4 kids in college right now as we speak. They're all in college at the same time. So, you have 4 kids that's I don't even have a college degree, and I have children with college degrees. So, that's one thing I'm very proud of, and trying to make sure that I'm the best dad out there. That's one thing I'm most proud of. Way more proud of that than anything I've ever accomplished in football.
Can you tell the people who do not know, Edgerrin, about getting to the University of Miami from where it is that you were from in Immokalee? You were talking about things that you did not have, but it's more than that, right? I mean, you were weightlifting, going back to Immokalee, and you're having crackheads. You were paying them. This is as a child. You were like 9, 8 years old. You're amusing yourself because you're surrounded by a lot of temptations and a lot of bad things, and you grow up fast. I don't think the audience knows just how much you overcame to statistically get to where you are. The odds were all against you.
Yeah, and that's why they need to go get the book. Those things are in the book, because it's one of the things where you could have easily went left. When you look at this stuff, it's like you could have made the wrong turn at any point in time, but for some reason, something's shining on you. Somebody, has their hand on you. I don't know if it's your mom's prayer, your grandma's prayer, but somebody has their hand on you because for some reason, you end up making the right decision at the right time. And that's like the story of my life. I don't know why I was put in this situation, because I grew up in the same situation as a lot of my peers. I know a lot of people that was athletic. I know a lot of people that had the same things that I've had. Some of them had more. But for me, it was always just at that right moment, making the right decision. Why did I make that decision? You never know. But it ended up working out the right way.
Do you have a memorable I went at it with Peyton Manning story? Because he can be a baby sometimes. He loses his temper, and I don't imagine he's doing a whole lot of that to you.
Nah, we had a mutual respect for each other, and the way we played the game and the way we understood the game was, when it's time to run the ball, you run the ball. When it's time to pass the ball, you pass the ball. And I think that's why we got along so well, because we understood each other. If it was something that I needed, and I say, hey, Peyton, I have these incentives in my contract, and I need to get these yards because that money means something to me. And he'll check in with me. He'll check in with me through the game. So when you got a person,
wait a minute.
I love this. Stop for a second.
I want to hear the rest of this story, because you told the story. It was Jim Mora, I think, right? It was Jim Mora who said he wanted you to kneel on the ball at the end of the game, and you're like, bleep that. I'm not kneeling on the ball. I've got incentives for touchdowns. I need a touchdown here. How does that one fly with Peyton? He's happy. He likes the rebellion.
That's why our relationship is the way it is, because and nobody's coming between me and my money. It means something to me. It really means a lot to me, especially where I'm coming from. If I get from here to 20 yards down there, that's the difference between making $500,000 or $1 million. You better make sure I get it, because that's a lifetime right there. Yeah, some people work their whole lives and don't make $1 million. All I gotta do is get 20 more yards. You better help me get these 20 yards. So we're always on the same page, and that's the thing about it. But we always did everything within the game, because you can go within the game and do it the right way and still accomplish what you want to accomplish. And that was the beauty of everybody being on the same page. It wasn't a thing where at the end of the game, you say, hey, man, I just needed 20 more yards and I didn't get it, but I didn't speak up. No, I speak up. I'm going to let you know ahead of time.
Well, go tell us the story. So you're coming into the huddle and you're like, Peyton, I need 35.
It doesn't start in the huddle. It starts Monday.
During the week.
It starts on Monday. Hey, I need this amount of catches or yards. And we got, I just want you to know, because you have the ability to change the play at any time. And,
Not more,
I just want you
to
know,
right?
this your boy back here, man, because, and for me, it's like, and that's one thing. I've always had his back, and situations like that let me know, man, what? He got my back too. So it always worked out.
Did he ever let you down on a bonus? Like I'm trying to get you the bonus.
Did this happen multiple times? How many times did this happen?
Well, I had incentives in my contract throughout the year. I mean, throughout the first so many years. So during those period of time, you know, you want to make sure that, hey, I need to get these incentives. I know we're going to be sitting out the last game of the season, so we need to make sure let's get all this stuff out the way so it's a non-issue. You know, and so we were able to accomplish those things without a problem. Everybody was happy.
Let's talk about
He
money.
hit every one of them.
Let's talk about money for a second, though, because I've seen on Instagram you're sitting on giant stacks of cash. I don't know how much money that is, but it's giant stacks of cash.
Mm-hmm. Those are ones, man. Those were ones. That's nothing compared to what they got out in this world. You know, that's baby money compared to the money these guys putting out there. So that's nothing. But it's fun. It's entertaining. I'm in the nightlife business, so you know it's all part of marketing.
What can you tell us about that? I don't know, because you are public about that, but I don't imagine many people are asking you about that, and I imagine it's a private thing as well. But I've never known Edgerrin James to be anything but honest. Like, he ain't hiding anything. So how did you get into that business, and what was the decision making like? Because you are a prudent businessman. You know how to make money with your money.
Well, I think it's you know, over the years, when you become a ball player and you start looking at the things that we're into, the things you're into are the things that you're into. You're not gonna really get away from it. And for me, I've always liked the nightlife, you know, and if it's something that you enjoy, you start inquiring about it. So you start learning about it. And throughout my career, I was always doing real estate. So I had a chance to combine real estate and being in the nightlife business, you know, all in one. So it was like the perfect storm for me. So I started, you know, buying real estate, and on the real estate, you know, there's a club. And with the club, you know, you kind of get the best of both worlds. And for me, that's kind of where I like to sit. I like to sit where I'm working, but I'm also having fun.
But you wouldn't drink at all, correct? If I have this right, when guys, during your playing days, you would not have drinks. When you're talking about nightclub, you're talking about adult entertainment. You're not talking about drinking and partying.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what club you go to. Like, when it came to me and football, you know, football was my life. You know, I didn't care to drink that. I was not interested in that. You know, anything that works against what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do in life, there's no need to even consider it. So drinking was never part of the equation.
Did you not accomplish anything you imagined yourself accomplishing in football?
I think I've accomplished everything. You know, you want to win a championship. You know, I got right there I got real close to winning one. But for me, the ultimate goal was to take this game and use this game to be able to enhance my family structure, enhance my family life, to put us in positions to where now I can say, you know, I have 4 kids in college right now. You know, those were the things that were more important. You know, those are the things that football was able to afford me, the opportunity to be able to do those things right there. And I think that's the most important thing, to be able to, you know, take your family from a place like Immokalee and be able to see the world and travel.
When you say proud of your kids, Edge, this is a big one for you, right? Them all being in college. Can you explain to me why it is that part of it? You being able to provide a life that, you know how hard it was for you to get to college. You know what you had to overcome in order to get to college. I don't know if Edgerrin James spoils his kids or not, but my guess is they didn't have to endure what he had to endure in order to get to college.
Nah, I mean, they shouldn't have to either, because, you know, I'm in a position where I can position them to actually go to college. And you're talking about some people never get a chance to go to college. And right now, today, I have 4 kids in college, on college campus. You know, I have my one daughter at North Carolina A&T, you know, my other daughter at Clark Atlanta, another one, my son, he just enrolled in Howard. He's an early enrollee. And then my other daughter, she's finishing law school in May. And coming from my situation, my background, that's unheard of. I don't know if you're looking at Guinness Book of World Records, do you have anybody else that has 4 kids in college at the same time, coming from where I'm coming from? You're not going to find that, you know.
What in the book do you want fans to know? Not inspirational, but just something that it's important to you to clear the record on, or something that when you sat down to do this project, you said, I think fans need to have access to this part of my personality or my story?
Well, I don't think it's nothing to set the record straight. I think a fan will look at it and see some of the chapters and they'll get a greater appreciation for how much work was put in from the coach organization, from each player, from your players and the way it was going. I think it's like a guide to some players. They can look at this and they can say, man, these guys, they really worked. It wasn't just show up and play. It wasn't a thing where it was selfish. It was all about a team. It was all about everybody coming together. And I think the fans from that era, they're going to get a greater appreciation for the group that we had. And it's going to be hard to duplicate that, to have that many people at the same time coming from different backgrounds. But when you get on that field at the same time, everybody's on the same page and everybody has the same common goal.
Ed, you retired in 2009. If I told you in 2009 that 12 years later, Tom Brady would be coming off a Super Bowl victory and would be the likely MVP, you would have said what to me?
Man, well, Brady plays quarterback, so when you play quarterback, you have a chance to play a long time. But, man, you're happy to see people that you actually play with it, but it actually makes you feel older than you actually are. It's like, dang, I was actually playing with Brady, but I've been retired for over 10 years and Brady's still going. So, no, but that's something that's amazing accomplishment. And you're rarely going to see something like that happen because those things right there, that's tough to accomplish. But that goes back to taking care of your body, being in tune with the game, and actually loving the game. You got to love the game to be playing for 20 years. It's just like Frank Gore. I was like, man, how long is he going to keep going? It's like, it's tough to get out there mentally because, the locker room is where you socialize. And I know Frank started turning into a parent in the locker room. He's like, man, I'm like, he's leaving home as a parent and coming to the locker room as a parent because it's like, dang, these kids weren't even born and I was out here playing ball. It's like those things right there. I had to take my hat off to them to be able to stay in there that long and to be able to stay into it because it's a tough business and you spend a lot of time in that locker room.
Fill in some of the blanks here, just rapid fire. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions here to chronicle your career. The toughest teammate Edgerrin James ever had was blank.
Anquan Boldin. He's tough. Anquan Boldin is one of the toughest people you're going to meet.
The guy at the University of Miami who I most said, that guy might be as good as I am at this, was blank.
Ed Reed. Ed Reed could play both sides. He could play both sides of the ball.
The best teammate I've ever had is blank.
It's a bunch of good teammates. It all depends on the situation. So I'm not gonna blame. I would say probably Rod Mack. That was like one of my close friends. The teammate. He played on the other side of the ball. So at the University of Miami, I would have to say Rod Mack.
But Peyton got you your bonuses, man.
I thought we were talking about the younger years.
He wants to reminisce about the Miami years, the fun years,
the
best
fun years, not the business years.
The best
on the business years. P Money always took good care of me. So I always call him P Money too. Yeah.
He doesn't look like a P Money, but he was the P Money if he's calling the plays at the line. How much did he make you? Let's go ahead just off I don't know if you know exactly, but in the neighborhood. The amount of money that Peyton Manning made me by doing the correct thing on audibles to get me my incentives was blank.
No, I can't say made me. I say because everybody made money that had incentives, so you're like kind of in control of it. So I can't say, okay, yeah, he made this, but at the end of the year, he would make sure that those bonuses are secured.
The guy on the other side of the ball, nobody keeps Edgerrin James up at night, but if he was going to lose a wink of sleep, a linebacker that might make him lose a wink of sleep was blank, or defensive lineman.
Still blank.
It's still blank.
That's so great.
Nobody. Yes. So it's not anybody. There's not.
Still blank.
I love that.
Never.
It's still blank.
Never. Is that real, or is it because you will not give anyone that begrudging respect even many years after your retirement?
I mean, it was nobody that it's like, man, I want to see him. It's like, man, it's like if you're the best, I want to see. I remember like we playing in the game, and like you coming from the University of Miami, you always hear about Marvin Jones. Remember Marvin Jones? And I'm like, we playing against the Jets. I'm like, as soon as I get an opportunity, I'm running full speed in front of him to Marvin Jones. Like I want to feel it. Like I want to see it. I want to know what the best of the best is. But that's always been my approach. So like I haven't seen nobody that says, man, I don't want to go up against this person, whatever. I want to see all that. I want all that action right there, because that's what's going to separate you from the rest of everybody else. Like I want to see the biggest, baddest, so that I can see where I'm at and see what I need to do to get my game up.
I mean, not even Ray. Ray?
Man, we all play at the U, man. So we out there, man. Like, it's like, man, it's just like you playing against your brother and all that. So you don't even put them in the category, because you don't even look at it like that,
Ricky
like
Williams. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, so when you play, you don't even right. look at them that way. I don't look at them as the enemy. You look at it like we just doing our job, and at the end of the play, we might be talking about something back home or something. It's like it's a different game when you're playing against your boys.
Ricky Williams said Roy Williams on tape, he broke into the open field and went looking for him because Roy Williams was a bully as a safety, went looking for him. You're telling me that Marvin Jones, before the Marvin Jones game, you break into the open field and you're looking for Marvin Jones because you want him to feel you?
Yeah. Nah, I just wanted that action. It's like Marvin Jones, Marvin Jones is like the legend, you saying, okay, somebody that did it the right way and that was a beast playing football. You're like, man, yeah, I want that action. I want to go up against him, because and they respect it too. The older guys always respect a younger guy that come in and go at him and play hard. Like we used to play against Brian Cox, and we used to play against all those guys that were from the old school, like Bruce Smith. They respected the guy that come in and don't fear you and really want to play the game, because it's a gladiator sport and we all embrace each other. So those were situations that I was like, man, I always wanted the action against everybody who was the best.
He wanted all that smoke, Dan.
Thank you, Stugotz. I appreciate it. That's very important that you identify that. The new book, From Gold Teeth to Gold Jacket, My Life in Football and Business, available February 8th. Always good catching up with you, Edge.
Okay, Kate, let's start with you. I mean, I understand part of this. I know that rules give us a sense of structure. They give us balance and authority, and they also absolve us from doing a lot of thinking and from challenging. But rules also put us in our place. Where does this conversation take you?
Yeah, I think you laid it out so nicely in that essay to start, Howard, because the way that I think about rules, and for a long time I kind of thought about rules as like they didn't come necessarily from people per se, therefore they could have biases, right? They were rules, like they were written things, and I like use the word immutable. And then especially playing women's sports, you start to kind of like arch an eyebrow at the way rules come about and come into play. And I started to kind of land in this place where I'm like, rules are both a reflection of society and they reinforce society at that certain time that they are made. And, I think zooming out to like the historical viewpoint, as you alluded to in the piece, is a great place to start. Because you even mentioned, like women's basketball, there was a time when you couldn't cross half court. If you go back even farther to just the first few years after Naismith invents the game, the way that basketball was played in many places when women played it was that as many women were on the court, there were boxes for those women. So if you had a game with 11 players, you had 11 boxes on the court, and you couldn't leave that box.
Can I stop you right there for just a quick second, Because I remember this when I was a kid, and I'm not that old, but I remember those structures. Like when you looked at the old basketball books, you saw like they had the section for the women's game, and you could see these spaces where you couldn't move. It was like you were playing Foursquare. But here's something that I don't know. What was the rationale for that?
Well, it's
women in their places.
Yeah, well, literally put them in their places. But like the age-old rationale that permeates so much of the rules and regulations in women's sports, which is let us make this less rigorous for women. It can't possibly be that women could run even half of a court's length.
Mm.
And we don't want to getting too physical, because when women were first starting to play basketball in that like squishy period when Naismith publishes the rules and Clara Bayer and Sanda Berenson haven't like modified them to women's rules, of course there are women who are getting physical in trying to take the ball from one another, and we couldn't have that. So it was like both this like rigorous and this physicality to make it quote unquote ladylike. And I think even using that as an example of we should always be looking at the rules of our game as in a historical context of at the moment they're created, they are reflecting and reinforcing society, and they exist at that time based on the evolution of where both humanity is and the human body is. And I've thought about that as someone who played women's basketball. Of course, I think about the rules that exist in that all the time. And then also as someone who covered the NBA, feeling like there are some parts of this game that shouldn't be rigid anymore. That shouldn't be, as you said, Howard, immutable. Like we have evolved in so many ways, and like we need our rules to be evolving in real time.
I mean,
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about what you're saying there, Kate, and I know in Islam, obviously, there is this concept of polygamy, that a man may have up to 4 wives. Well, the reason why it's 4 is that before, Islam, the local tribesmen in the Arabian Peninsula routinely had 15, 20, 25 wives. And so when they came in and were spreading the faith, legend has it, they were like, they want to get it down to monogamous, and like, boss, I don't think they're gonna go for that one. So this is like a middle.
It's a compromise.
Yeah, I was like, all right, can we get them down to 4? Can we get it down to 4? Does that work? And they're like, all right, but but otherwise,
that's a big win if you can go from 15 to 25 down to 4. That's a big W.
Yeah.
But the idea was that at that time in history, the idea of telling these people you were going to have struggle getting converts. Well, obviously, society's progressed since then, and we've that even in of itself of 4 wives is an outdated concept. Similarly, in basketball, the other thing I was thinking about, not just things that were reflective of society at the time but don't reflect us now, but the concept of rules that were enacted with the belief that this would be the right thing to do to fix whatever problem. And then later on we discovered, yeah, that absolutely didn't fix it. It might have made it worse. So in society, the great example of this is the 19th Amendment, prohibition, right? The idea that, hey, alcohol is bad. We've got all this organized crime and people are kind of late to work, whatever. We should ban alcohol. You ban it, and instead it proliferates this black market and increases violent crime as these organized crime factions are, in essence, battling for territory and for
Not
the
a
rights.
temperance man.
Yeah. And so what we end up doing is like, yeah, that we wanted it to accomplish something. It did the exact opposite. Get rid of that rule. In basketball, an example of this would be the 3-point line. Hey, 3-point shooting isn't that great. We should move it in closer. Just make it a uniform 22 feet. And they moved it in, and what happened was the people who were great shooters continue to be great shooters. But then it just, rather than get better 3-point shooting across the board, what we got were people who aren't 3-point shooters, like Charles Oakley, saying, I'll throw my hat in that ring.
Or Charles Barkley.
Close, I can do that.
Barkley was a leading 3-point shooter in the mid-90s. He was taking as many threes as anybody.
Because it's like, now you've made it this close. Oh, yeah, all day long. And again, so we found, that probably wasn't the way to go, and we pulled it back. And so I like the idea of rules that represent society and how we think of things at the time, but also like the idea of like sometimes they're used to address things and we figure out this doesn't work, so let's change it.
Yeah, indeed. And one of the things that's interesting about the entire conversation about rules is the reason for their enactment in the first place. And I think that what we do is we go into this believing in a certain level of fairness, that we go into it ideally, that the reason is always to create fairness. That's the reason for the rule, right? Well, sometimes the reason is control. Sometimes the reason is money. Sometimes the reason is reinforcement. You were talking about the 3-point shot in the NBA, and I thought where you were going to go was the original was back in '79. The NBA stayed away from everything that the ABA was doing because the ABA was the street league. It was the ghetto league. It wasn't the cool league, right? It wasn't the reputable league.
Yes. The idea was that this isn't basketball. This is whatever those people do over there. And this is basketball. And by the way, that belief system, even as when we sit here today, you watch NBA basketball today, and you can watch ABA basketball and NBA basketball pre-merger and say, which one of these looks more familiar?
It's the ABA.
Everyone would choose ABA. But to this day, that vein of like, yeah, that's not real exists. It's the reason why Larry Brown has 1,000 wins as opposed to 1,300 wins, as he should be the third or fourth winningest coach of all time, because they don't count ABA records, because there's this always feeling of the establishment saying that was just a sham. It was just a mockery of the game. Even as today, all the best parts, a slam dunk contest, a 3-point line on the floor, an improvisational freewheeling style of play. It's all our league now, but lacking a less.
Yeah, it's this idea that the rules are first believing that they're fair and right is kind of the default setting that we sometimes go into sports with, rather than actually realizing, to Howard, to your point that you also said in the essay, that hey, often the rules are created by the winner, in the same way that history is written by the conquerors. Rules are created by the winner. I mean, like, this is a silly example, but if you've ever played like a game at someone's house, like something stupid like charades, and at first you're
House
like,
rules?
you're making it up as you go along, right? You're like, can you skip ones? And first you're like, sure, you can skip them. Then somebody skips 9, and you're like, well, that's not working for me. You can only skip 1, and then you'll be like, and then you get to the point where the house rules, right? You're like, if somebody is good at something and it's in their house, then the rules are structured so that they are maximizing their own potential. And the fact that we would believe that this wouldn't happen in sports, like the easy, case for basketball being like, once 3-point shooting is proliferated, like, we are going to make sure that we structure the rules so that hand checking's not happening, because this is the style of play that the winners are playing right now. And we have to make sure that the style that is selling, that we are getting higher ratings than we've ever gotten. Like, we don't want that 90s basketball to come creeping back in.
No,
it's like the winners writing those rules, right?
Oh, I feel like a winner, because I don't want the 90s to come back. Final score: Pacers 69, Knicks 62.
Right.
In overtime.
In
overtime.
This thing of like the rules being fair and right, like there's always a finite time where they're working. Whether they're fair, we'll leave that aside. But whether they're working, it's always a moving target. Yeah. We don't put rules in and then 40 years later that it's a rare rule, unless it's a foundational piece of a game, that is still working. And to me, the interesting thing about football, because it's the jumping off point, is the NFL games. It might just be for NFL overtime that there's no perfect way of doing it.
No,
I mean, we've been living that way for a very long time with soccer. Like, when we get to penalty kicks, like, we're all sitting there going, God, there's got to be a better way. But maybe there isn't. And that when we get to that point in a game, that's when you're kind of like, ooh, well, sports aren't just black and white. And we have always created everything to the very last second to be the most fair. Sometimes you get there and you're like, we ain't got nothing better than this.
Exactly. Well, we're going to get back to that in a quick second, but I want to stop right now and just say, in terms of house rules, yes, when you play Monopoly, the utility money goes under free parking.
Free parking, yep.
Right? It does, doesn't it?
All the fines
go under free parking.
Yes, absolutely.
I remember playing that once, and I put the money into free parking, and some people I was playing with, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm putting the money where it's supposed to go. Everybody knows this. House rules.
House rules.
Right. And I think that one of the things too, and we're talking about fairness, you can't get away. It's almost like what we've been talking about the last 2 weeks previously, about this illusion of meritocracy. We have this illusion of fairness. And when I think about this, I think about baseball. The rules that we watch, and it's not the baseball rules as much as it is the baseball unwritten rules. All of that comes from the pre-integration game. Baseball is played very differently across the world. You watch the way during the pandemic, and we were watching Korean baseball, and you're seeing all the bat flips, and they play the game. They swing differently. They play differently. It's a very different style over there. You watch a Caribbean baseball. You go watch the Dominican Winter League baseball. They play with a different energy. You watch Negro League baseball, different energy. But then when you come to the big leagues, Major League Baseball, white American baseball, now we're going to hit you in the head if you hit a home run off of us, right? The next guy goes down. Like, there's a totally different unwritten rule structure that baseball has been struggling with for the last 40 years about whether or not how this game is played. Is it playing the game right, or is this simply the way you play the game?
Right. Is it just, yep, go ahead. No, I mean, go for it.
Go. No, I was going to say,
No,
the rule is you're going to go.
No.
I refuse.
I was just going to chime in saying, like, to your point, Howard, that seems to be a reflection of U.S. machismo and a reinforcement of it. This idea of, like, you're hitting people if they hit a home run and then they toss their bat too high and you don't like it. That seems to me to be like a reflection of that part of our society. I'm not saying that doesn't exist anywhere else, but and then when you start to see it creep in and question. Now the topic is, should we still be beating people in the head?
Right.
And there's almost this digging in of the heels.
Itself, Kate.
Yeah, we're digging in of the heels. Is like, this is what makes men, is being able to do this.
Well, that sounds like hockey as well. Like, for example, I remember taking a girlfriend when I was living in California, and I took her to a Sharks game. And in fact, I got to see Gretzky playing for the Rangers. And fight breaks out, and she's going, they're fighting. Yes, they're fighting. And nobody's doing anything about it. I'm like, they're not. How can that be? I'm like, those are the rules. And once again, fighting in hockey is one of those things where if you're not a hockey person or not a sports person at all, and you just happen to like walk past the TV and you see all these guys duking it out and both benches are tapping their sticks going, yeah, good job, man, good job. What is this?
And then from a non-hockey person, like if they fall off their skates, it's over. Like, that's the rule, right? Like, who instituted that being the rule? That like, that's
now
the
they
end of
climb
the
on
fight.
top of each other, but once there's a little bit of separation, the referee, the linesman, they're waiting for a moment to jump in. But generally speaking, there's an actual rule to this. Like, there is a structure to it. Like, there is, like, if you drop the gloves and I don't, you're not supposed to punch me. We're both supposed to, there's an etiquette to this. Right. We're both supposed to drop them at the same time. And then we're supposed to duke it out. And then there had been like this argument, very, not that different, very similar to baseball in terms of, okay, if you get a little too fresh, I'm going to throw the ball at you because this is how the game is allowed to police itself, right? That there's a structure.
Well, here's the funny thing about that. In both of those examples, both baseball and hockey, these are two sports where we can say unequivocally the best professional league in all of the world is right here in the United States. But if I said, who's the best at playing this sport? We wouldn't say the United States for either of those sports.
And never have.
And furthermore, never have. And furthermore, beyond that, even now when they compete in world games, like the World Cup of baseball, like the Winter Olympics in hockey, we don't have any of those shenanigans. We don't have the unwritten rule of hitting people because they bat flip. We don't have a bunch of fights in Olympic hockey. So, like, where does this air of superiority come where it's like, no, this is how it's done, when clearly it's not done like this anywhere else?
And especially because I'm a big hockey fan. I love Olympic hockey. No fights at all. Still a great game. Still a well-policed game.
Not still a great game.
It is a great game.
When you say still a great game, it has a level of like, how can this be
a good game because we don't do it?
Nobody got punched. How can you call this a good game? Right? It's crazy. It's like actually watching people play the sport that we came here to watch them do is actually a better product than watching them fight or throw things at each other or whatever.
Well, it's the old thing. I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, but it goes back to kind of the rules, who's making the rules, who's upholding the rules, why, who, if the rules were made a long time ago, why do we feel an attachment to making sure they stay the same? I always talk about this with basketball. We're the baby sport, right? So for us, changing rules is a part of the thing. We do it all the time. We have a competition committee that sits around and says, I don't like this rule. Let's try doing this instead. That's not the case in baseball. What is it about baseball specifically that makes it so resistant to change?
History. The game's been around since the end of the Civil War. And it's been played a certain way, even though during that time period in 1889, it was 8 balls to a walk, right? And then it went from 7 to 6 to 5, and ultimately they settled on 4. So all of those polygamy things, right?
Creeping down.
Exactly, right? It's a good compromise, and you start to have these, things become cultural. Like, and it would be really interesting to look and find out at what year the rules stopped shifting and it became the game that we know now. And I mean, as much as I agree with you that football is the baby sport. I'm sorry, that basketball is the baby sport. Football is the one that changes the rules all the time. I mean, if you like, the reason why people love baseball so much is the continuity, that it's basically the same game, dead ball era notwithstanding, basically the same game for the last 100 years, right? The bases haven't changed. The game hasn't changed. The way the game is played, most of that stuff hasn't really changed. I mean, you emphasize other things, some things over others, but basically it's the same sport. Football, you can't tell by the decade. You change the pass interference rules, and all of a sudden, Matthew Stafford is throwing 2,000 yards a year more than Joe Montana, right? And this is all simply structure-based. It's all just rules.
Yeah. Well, it seems in that way that football has always been, I don't know, purposefully onto something, because you could, and probably people smarter than me probably already have made a case that football has reflected America throughout the decades in the way that it's being played. Like, no one would want to watch football now back in the 1920s when it was like, just rush the ball and there's no forward pass, and like it's basically rugby.
Exactly.
Or there you go, 1970s. And yet, you see like, as the ball is getting aired out, and then the proliferation of like the passers, like it feels very representative of American society too.
It's modern, right? And that's the and that's the thing. But very little of that has anything to do with fairness as much as it has to do with excitement. It has to do with
television,
and television.
Football is a television sport, and none of these changes have anything to do with, is this fair? And it has everything to do with, how do we make this a better television product?
Exactly. You mean to tell me, you're not interested in the old Chuck Knox 3rd and 9 draw play? Right? I mean, it was essentially, you had run the ball, draw play, kick, punt. It was like the worst type of football ever. I was actually, switching gears a little quickly on this too, is that I remember bringing up my radical idea that basketball had outgrown itself, that basketball had outgrown its rules. If you go back to the founding fathers, to down the street in Springfield, nobody had ever anticipated basketball being as fast, as physical, as vertical as it became. And I was thinking, like, name me another sport where you get disqualified for a routine infraction. That would be like losing your left tackle because you got called for holding 3 times. It's like, this just needs to change. And especially because of the star system. You knew that in the last 6 or 7 minutes of a game, Magic Johnson and LeBron and these guys, they're not going to get called for fouls. They can do whatever they want. And so I was like, maybe there's another way. And I remember being on in the green room at Sports Reporters, and Ryan and Lupica and the late, great John Saunders, they laughed at me like it was impossible to change this. And yet, none of them actually argued with my point.
Right.
Which was, you can't officiate this game anymore.
And if it goes back to this idea that we've been touching on this whole conversation, which is that there's a reason that fouls existed in the first place, right? So Naismith is charged to come up with an indoor game to run off the boys' energy during the winter season. And then he's clearly that they are leaning toward being more physical than less physical because they're used to playing football outside. So of course, we've got to have these things called fouls. And in an added layer of punishment, let's make sure that there's a maximum number you reach and then you can't play anymore. And for that time period, right, I can't say for certain, but maybe that makes sense. maybe it makes sense.
The
And now
non-contact sport.
Yeah, to your point, Howard, of like both the evolution of the game and the human body and society leads us to this place where does that make any sense for the way we are playing the game now? In addition, something we've talked about offline being, does it make sense the actual physical parameters of a court
dimensions.
now
Yeah.
with the
They're
human
too big.
body? Like they can barely hit a corner 3 without stepping out of bounds. I mean,
Yep.
it's like what rules should be immutable, to use Howard's word, and which ones should we be flexible on?
So it's funny because the dimensions of the court, even think about the 3-point line. Why is the 3-point line 23-9 up top and then 22 in the corner? It's not because of any weird math or anything. It's a very simple reason. The court's not wide enough to go 23-9 all the way around. That's why. That's the only reason why. So it's like, well, can we make the court wider? No, heaven forbid. It's funny. I always think about when people reject ideas like yours, Howard, of like, let's change the personal foul limit. Like, what were those people would have been like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when someone said, guys, we just had a game that ended 1917. This is ridiculous. What if we put a clock right there and it's got like 24 seconds and they got to shoot or else?
So,
Don't
I was watching the Australian Open last night, and Pam Shriver made a reference to the four corners defense. And I was like, I wonder how many people today know what the four corners defense is.
Yeah. No, it's but which was basically, for those of you guys don't know, it's four corners is like, hey,
Like
we're
keep
up.
away.
Yeah,
Like keep away for 10 minutes.
Hold it and pass it, and the guys are in 4 different corners in the front court. But so it's always funny to me when people say absolutely not, that's how we've always done it. It's like, you don't understand how many ridiculous, radical rule changes there have been throughout the course of basketball and other sports. For instance, you used to be able to shoot a free throw for as long as you took off from before the free throw line. It didn't matter where you landed, it was all right. You know why they changed that rule? Because Wilt would just run up and dunk from the free throw line. And they're like, okay, we've got to stop that. Right. So there's all types of things that we change because we realize this doesn't work anymore. With regards to your idea about the fouls, Howard, I think one of the reasons why foul outs exist is because not just because it was a very physical sport once upon a time, Kate, but also we have to make it so that the defense that you play can't be just, well, I'll just foul them.
I'll just crush you. Exactly.
Yeah,
and that was Ryan's point. Ryan was like,
well,
you're going to have guys crush each other every 2 minutes.
Well, even
but I mean, or isn't the penalty already baked in with the 1-and-1 and 2 shots? I mean, there's also that disincentive to not be fouling.
Sure,
That's
sure.
right.
But the problem is, okay, for players, let's say against a Shaquille O'Neal or a Giannis Antetokounmpo or whatever, I'll take that disincentive. I'll let him shoot. And you tell me I can play my guy the whole game, he doesn't have to leave. That's a problem. I had this conversation with Ethan Strauss a long time ago. Ethan said free throws are the most boring part of any NBA game. So why don't we just get rid of them? Why don't we just get rid of them? Why don't if the guy gets fouled in the act of shooting, just give him the 2 points? And I said, you think that's going to get rid of guys hunting for free throws? It's like the opposite. You're going to get even a more elevated version of people hunting for things. So I want to, like, I guess all this part of the conversation is all about the best intentions of mice and men, right? Like, we want this to be a nice fluid game, but the reality is some of these rules are in place, not because anyone likes it, but because the alternative is for people to act.
Well, but let's go back to this, right? Let's stay with the NBA. My rationale when we were having this conversation was all about the star system, was about the referees are caught in a political situation. That's Julius Erving. That's Damian Lillard. That's Magic Johnson. I can call a foul on Marcus Smart, but I'm not calling that very same foul on LeBron James, especially in the final 5 minutes of a game, right? So my issue wasn't simply that, okay, the game has been outstripped by its rules. I'm sorry, the rules have been outstripped by the game. but also that you've got a major problem here because you can't even call the game the way it is.
Howard, not a problem, because nobody at home is watching and say, ooh, I wish Marcus Smart could play a little bit more. But if Damian Lillard fouls out, if LeBron James fouls out, if Magic fouls out, now we have a television problem. Now we have a product problem. And the star system exists because that's what puts bacon on the table.
So we're not even talking at all about
Not
the
fairness.
actual product of the fairness of the game.
Even we're falling into the default fairness trap, right?
That's
Which
right.
this could be more fair. And Amin is here to tell us, sure, it could be more fair, but does it impact the product? Does it impact the bottom line?
Well, it goes back to, once again, the reason for the rules is constantly moving. Like for example, like when you're talking about the product in the NFL, and we're talking about fairness, and we're talking about opportunity and all of these things. Talk to a defensive player over the course of the last 30 years in the NFL. They're like, you don't even want us to play. You don't want us to be part of. We're only on the field because we have to be, right? I mean, you look at right exactly. So if you're a defensive player, everything in your universe has been to lessen your impact on the sport. And what's been really funny about it is that you go back to the Chiefs and the Bills game, people were complaining, where's the defense? You took the defense away years ago.
You can't touch anybody. You can't
touch anybody.
I mean, it's so, and by the way, if you hit a guy too hard or in the wrong place or at the wrong time, all of these carry massive penalties with them. And, the reality is, and I'm interested to see how the NFL adjusts, because I think we saw a little bit of that this year in the NBA, where there happened a reinterpretation of some rules, because we began to realize that the offense had too much of an advantage. And part of a beautiful package or a beautiful television product is seeing the offense overcome some sort of resistance. But if we lessen the impact of defense in the sport, at some point there is no resistance, and
your game's out of balance.
Yeah. Now
and this is it's kind of like the rules, rather than being like immutable and fair, are basically trying to hit some level of a sweet spot, right? It's all about the sweet spots. Like, where is the product the best? Where we're getting the most money for the TV product. People feel like there's defense, but it's not limiting us to 9 to 7 games.
Right.
And I feel like that, and that's kind of the conversation we were having too on the NBA side, being part of what's baked into the game about having 5 fouls and fouling out, or 6 in the NBA, is like, it's a strategy play. It's baked into the strategy. So if you remove it, how does it affect the strategy? And like,
penalty
is there
box
a
in
sweet
basketball
spot there? Yeah. All right. Howard's got another one for us.
Penalty box in basketball. Or you know what? Or how about this? You know what? You are going to be disincentivized to foul if you got 2 shots in the ball or 1 shot in the ball.
Right.
Right. I mean, there are ways to do this, right? There are ways to do it.
Yes.
They
To
did
hit
it
that
in
sweet
Summer
spot.
League. They did it in Summer League a few years ago, where rather than have guys foul out, you were allowed up to 10 fouls, but every foul after your 6th one, it was like 1 shot in the ball for every foul that you had, that you committed. So it was kind of a different kind of disincentive structure. This gets me curious as to, for you guys, if you could change any rule in any sport, what would it be?
I mean, for me,
you just
it
need
would
time.
definitely,
Go ahead,
you would
Kate.
need, I mean, for me, it's always been basketball, because I feel like the NBA game is actually a fraction of what not a fraction. It's a large percentage of the possibility of what it could be. I mean, there's so much, like the way the game was invented, because we've talked a lot about, Naismith and the original playing of it. There was so much beautiful movement. And not that we've lost that completely. The movement has been like shifted to the outside more than like backdoor cuts. If you could combine the insane athleticism with movement and open up the court, like to me, that has long been, since I covered the Sixers, and you're sitting courtside and you're actually seeing up close, as I know we all have, how big those players are and how small that court is, and the potential for what basketball could look like. It feels like it's a no-brainer in the next 20 years to like expand that.
All right, I'm going to start yelling at the clouds right now. And I don't care if anybody's mad at me for yelling at them, because They're my clouds. Okay. I would get rid of the 3-point shot. And the reason why I would hear me out. I haven't even started yet. Here's why I would get rid of it. Here's the reason why, right? I grew up with basketball as a game of makes. Very simple. If you were a good offensive player, you made half your shots and you made 80% of your free throws, right? I mean, that was a good offensive player. Like, even if you go back and I'm an 80s guy, so I'm not a 90s guy. So I'm not used to looking at, John Starks and shooting 40% from the field. Sorry, Chris Herring. But and also K Fagan 3. Sorry about that, John Starks.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, John Starks is my guy. He's my childhood basketball hero. So thank you, Howard, for the name check there.
Right, I am absolutely into the 80s. I mean, Doug Moe went a little too far with the 126 a game while giving up 125 with the 81-82 Nuggets. But at the same time, basketball has now turned into a game of misses. And I don't watch the game for misses. I watch the games for high efficiency makes. And the way that this game is now, when you're going 9 for 27 from 3, and that the word efficiency now is it's not based on making shots. It's based on the amount of threes that you have to, the amount of twos you have to make to compensate for the extra point. But what's being lost in here is the aesthetic of we're just watching so many goddamn misses. They're just clanking the ball up and down. So I'm like, okay. I also remember the late 90s and the Celtics and the Knicks and the Pistons beating the hell out of each other and clogging the lane to the point where the game bogged down there, which brought us into the 90s. So somewhere along the line, I wonder what that compromise could be, because that game brought us into the 90s, Knicks and Pacers scoring 140 points combined. But what we have today is, it's a 3-point shooting contest. And so somewhere I'm trying to find out what that balance is going to be. With the way these guys can shoot today, with the size and the fact that positions don't even exist anymore, not being tied, not having your entire offense tied to a 1-4 high, everybody shoot the 3 or circle, ring the 3-point line, maybe you'd have a lot more mid-range, maybe you'd have a lot more space, maybe you'd get better shooting. I don't know.
And before we go to you, is it possible that opening up the court is a partial sell for what Howard's talking about? Because there's some disincentive to the mid-range game, because there's so crowded everywhere you move on the floor. Like, there's more space the farther out you get.
Yeah, I disagree with Howard, but and I realize
you can do that. Go, let me have it.
He said he was yelling at the clouds.
No, I know. And it's funny. It's like, hey, if you could do anything, what would it be? And then I immediately want to say, I want to be one of those people. You're nuts, Howard Bryant. What are you talking about? No,
but it is a game of misses now, right? I mean, tell me,
this is what the game is built on. And I think two things have happened. One is the players are, as we said earlier, bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic. They cover ground in a way they didn't even.
Yeah, their length. Absolutely.
That's one part of it. The other part of it, as I think defenses, and particularly defensive strategies, have advanced massively, because what happened in the 90s was, as the money came in from the TV deals, teams that in the 80s used to have 2 assistant coaches now have 4 and 5, right? And you've got guys who their whole job is, I'm just watching these 3 teams, what offenses they're running on a nightly basis, what are the play calls they're doing, what are the play calls called, where do they like, and so the preparation levels of NBA teams today, through technology, through just a bigger budget, is so much larger than it was even in the 1980s. That, yeah, it's so hard for our star players to do what they do, because the defenses are so too good. So you got to have some sort of disincentive to pull away. Because if you take away that line, and it's a difference between me watching, say, for instance, Joel Embiid dunk it, or Seth Curry attempt a mid-range jumper, I'm going to, they're both 2 points, but one of them has a much higher likelihood. So I'm going to do everything in my power to not let this one happen.
Isn't that what's happening now?
Yeah, but the difference is the threat that happens with a Seth Curry or whoever is that when he hits his shot, he gets an extra point on top of that. So now I have to do a very real calculus of, okay, what's worse, a short thing right there or a kind of short thing over there, but that carries a larger
Not even
value
close
on
to
it.
a sure thing. I mean, what? I mean, nobody
I mean,
shoot 36, 37%
So-
from three. What's Steph shooting from three now?
Let me stick with Seth because it illustrates like the either or the pick your poison. Seth Curry shoots 41.7 from three, right? But if you were to take that and pull his effective field goal percentage on those shots, that's basically taking his makes and realizing that instead of counting for 2 points to count for a point and a half above that, overall his effective field goal percentage is at 60%. That's with his 2-point makes as well. So it really is a much higher proposition of, this is, it's when you add that extra point in, it's a lot closer to one another, the Embiid dunk or the Seth Curry three. Now, the problem is not everyone's Seth Curry.
I was going to say, what happens when you start adding everybody else to this? What happens to the aesthetic of the sport? And I remember talking to Tom Thibodeau about this when he was working for ESPN. We're in the green room one day, and I'm like, Tibbs, what is happening with this sport? He goes, well, the analytics of the sport say that there are only 2 shots you're trying to get. You're trying to get a dunk and a corner three. That's what we're trying to get on pretty much every trip down court. Those are the open shots based on where the defenses are.
And that's what I would, yes, but also that's what, based on what the defense is giving you, a lot of times that's what happens. But I would disagree with Tibbs in this way. To me, the three-point shot is not about being a three-pointer for the sake of being a three-pointer. The three-point shot is about how do I make defenses respect the other non-stars on the floor enough to let my stars do what they do, whether it's a three-pointer, a mid-range shot, or in the paint. I want my LeBrons, my Kevin Durant's, those guys to be unfettered by this guys hanging out like, hey, I'm not really guarding my man, so I guess I would help out over here. To me, and this leads me to my proposed rule change, and I stole this from someone. I don't remember who it was. I think it's Tom Havistro.
It's not even your rule change, then, if you
Not even my rule change. I like the idea that every home team gets to set where the three-point line is. I love this idea because if you're Milwaukee, you could say, hey, when you come to Fiserv, the three-point line is the restricted
So you
area.
want to go old-time hockey baseball where every arena has different dimensions.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because I want teams
Width of court as well?
I mean, no. Well, maybe, I don't know. Let's throw it up there. Yeah, why am I fighting that? Yeah, sure, why not? Why not? But the whole idea is, I kind of, in a weird way, admire baseball and the fact that all the stadiums are different, all the fields are different, and as a result, the front office calculus and how we build our roster takes that into account in a way
That's
that
right.
in other sports we're just putting the best 26-man, 53-man, 15-man roster we can. So I like the idea, no, there's a little added level of strategy here. If I've got a guy like Giannis who is unstoppable and has high volume right here, why wouldn't I want to exploit that versus if I'm a team like, say, the Golden State Warriors, where I shoot a lot of threes, I don't have a lot of inside might. I want that three-point line as far out as possible to make sure that the other team can't keep up with what we can do in both volume and accuracy from that distance.
That is outstanding. You know what? I am very, very happy that you ridiculed my
introduced that
short-sighted
one.
exactly
Yes.
with my short-sighted vision, and you introduced that because that would be amazingly fun, and it would also go ahead, Kate.
No, go.
I was going to say,
I got something.
what it would also do is it would radically change rosters. The only thing that I would suggest is our basketball players that diverse that you would have really different rosters, right? Like when you're looking at the 87 Twins or the 82 Cardinals playing on AstroTurf, those teams, those players, you had to get different types of players. Whereas if you were playing at Wrigley Field, if you were the Cubs or the Red Sox or the Orioles, you were looking at boppers because you had a short fence and those guys couldn't run. They didn't steal bases. They were just trying to hit the ball over the fence because they were playing to their ballpark.
I submit to you that the players are whatever the rules say they are. Just like 20 years ago, we didn't have anybody big really shoot. There was a couple of outliers like Sam Perkins and guys like that shooting threes. But once we started saying this is important, what do you get? You get a generation of 7-footers that all play out there. They'll do whatever we tell them is important to do. That's why we have so many players who want to be three-point shooters.
Okay, let's switch gears. I'm sorry, Kate, you got one more?
Just gonna say, I think we've landed at like a larger theme here once again, being that like the rules seem to reflect society and reinforce it. Because I mean, you could make an argument that the death of the mid-range is also correlated with like the death of the middle class in America. Like this idea of
All or nothing.
3-pointers, yeah, or all or nothing. The stratification, sorry, the polarization of the US seems to also be reflected in the way our sports have played out.
Yeah,
baseball too. Baseball too.
Baseball,
Right?
same thing,
Go
and
yard
that's
or-
why they're not playing right now. Let's finish our last 15 or so with the NFL. Let's go to this specifically. This is what started this whole conversation, and we haven't really even talked about it. When we talk about fairness and we talk about intention, the purpose of the overtime rule, to my mind, had always been, at least ostensibly, that both teams would get a chance to touch the football. That the reason why you brought in this overtime rule was because losing on a first possession field goal was kind of trash, right? And that you're creating this half measure that, okay, the argument that people are saying against this overtime rule with both teams touching the ball or whatever is get a stop, right? How many times have we heard this? Well, stop the ball, get a stop, and we're not talking about overtime. Buffalo, you had, you had 13 seconds to kill and you were on your own 25-yard line. That is all well and good, but that's not discussing the actual rule that we're talking about, right? So the rule itself is a half measure. On the one hand, yeah, it kind of sucks to lose on a first possession field goal. But on the other hand, we don't want defense to mean nothing. So yes, if you give up a touchdown, then that's on you, which doesn't really answer the fairness question of should I have a chance to touch the football? Now, to Kate's point of maybe none of this really works well, what do you do if you get the ball on the 25-yard line and you have a 12-play, 14-minute drive? The other team's not getting the ball anyway, right? So
why is there a clock? Someone asked that the other day.
I asked, why is there a clock in overtime, right? So my question is, what is the goal here when you're thinking about this game, when you're watching this game specifically? To me, I felt like, all right, if you're going to have a rule that says that's designed for both teams to touch the ball, then both teams should get the ball. That's it, right? Whether you score a touchdown, whether you score a field goal, what the NFL seems to be doing in this overtime rule is to say one type of score is more legitimate than another type of score. A touchdown is a definitive game ender, but a field goal really isn't, and that's what leaves me cold.
Yeah, it seems like the NFL is doing everything it can to not find itself in a situation that soccer has always found itself. Like they don't want an end of game that is like, all right, let's just kick best of 5 field goals here. They can't have that. And then at the same time, it seems to me that there is this feeling of football is very difficult and we can't just play it forever. So we want to put certain parameters in place to get to a resolution before we're just like little tackling dummies out there and we don't even feel like we have our best product anyway. And it feels like they're trying to thread the needle on something to the point in the beginning where I don't know that you're ever going to be able to thread it.
Right. I love the evolution of what overtime rules were and how we got here. We got here because people were, as Howard said, because people were winning a coin toss.
Yep.
They won a coin flip, and that's how they won it, right? And before that, we got there because people were playing 7 million overtimes, right? The overtime would just never end because teams were getting stop after stop or whatever. The other part of this that's funny is you don't want to be soccer, but you know who else they don't want to be? College football.
They don't want to be college football.
There is such a weird dynamic between pro and college sports. In there's a symbiosis of we need each other, and then there's also this, oh, I don't do it like that. That's how they do it over there. And so the idea that in college football, hey, each team gets a possession or whatever it is, and you get a try
from the 25-yard line,
and you just keep going.
You score a touchdown, cool. Now it's your turn. If we want to stop you or whatever, then that's it. That seems to me like a pretty good system. Right?
But since they already have it, it's off the table, and that's a weird place for the NFL to be.
That's how they do it over there. We'll never do it over here. right? And that's the needle you're talking about threading. There's a second needle that you have to also thread, which is also has to be something that they're not doing over there.
So that's just your ego. That's just ego
Oh,
talking.
Yep.
Well, isn't that what all of this
It's
is
always
about?
the way it is.
All the
Right.
rules are about ego on some level, right? The idea like, no, we're not going to do it like that because A, we've always done it this way. That's ego. Or B, because that's how they do it over there. We don't respect them.
That's right. But to the get a stop people, giving up a field goal isn't getting a stop either.
Yeah.
So that doesn't quite answer it. And I just sort of feel like when you're looking at the intention of this overtime rule, I think you're right, kid. I think when it comes to football, because you can hold the ball, it's not like baseball where, okay, you get your 3 outs at the top of the 10th and I get my 3 outs at the bottom of the 10th, because it's not based on outs, it's based on time. So what you would have to do if you were going to do it this way in the NFL was you couldn't have a clock. You get your possession, whether it's 10 plays, 10 minutes, or whether it's 3 plays, 2 minutes, and then I get my turn. And then we go from there. That you actually have an untimed overtime if that's how you really want to do it. If your goal is fairness.
I can't believe we've gone this far and I forgot about the most important rule change of all time, where Stugotz says, in baseball, we should have 1 extra inning, and if after 10 innings we don't have a winner, home run derby.
Home run
Soccer
derby.
style shooter, yeah. And you know
I
what?
just like Roy Wood Jr., who just says, fight. Fight. If we're tied at the end, fight.
Enough of this bullshit.
Exactly.
Let's just get down to
Exactly.
it.
No, that's right. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this conversation is the ability to look at the reason for the things, right? We like to rely on this idea that no, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create the most fair and equitable outcome for all parties involved. No, you're not. No, you're not.
No, that might be like number 9 on the list.
Exactly. And that's
A byproduct, if it happens, that's a great little byproduct, but not the driving force.
No, not the driving force. And that's why I tell people when we talk about sports and they talk about what you do for a living, and I always tell them, I hate to break it to you, but winning is probably 4th on the list for most teams. It's really not first. It's not first for, cost control is pretty much first. Player control is second. The third thing is more than likely making sure you have stadium control. And then 4th is let's put a pretty good product on the field. I mean, the business of the game comes before the game. And people look crestfallen when I say that, but hey.
You know what you just did there to them? You pulled the curtain back too quickly.
Mhm.
You can't show them
And do that
everything 'cause
slower. Yeah.
Exactly.
Blows their mind.
Exactly. It's like telling them Santa Claus is the old guy who lives around the corner that you just don't see all the time. Yeah. Final thoughts, anybody?
Oof. Kate, you can't widen the court for one reason and one reason only. That means you took a row of the highest dollar amount seating out of every arena, and they will never go for that. And I know people say, wait a second, a bigger court means you have more courtside seating, so that new first row gets to be the one that's most expensive. But the reality is you're still taking out whatever the attendance is, you just took out a sliver of money there. And so if anything, they're trying to figure out how to pack more people in these places.
Wait, so you think in like 80 years, when human beings have evolved even further, we're still going to be watching basketball if we're still around. If we're still going to be watching basketball on these parameters court, this parameter of court.
So the evolution of basketball is going to happen this way with the court dimensions change. About 10 years ago, the Bakersfield Jam, which is a G League franchise, they're defunct now. They got the idea. They played in Bakersfield, which is the middle of nowhere. So, we've got this 10,000 seat Civic Center. We can't fill it up. We're not doing well financially. So what they got the idea to do is they got rid of the Civic Center. They played in the practice facility. What they did was they made luxury boxes. It was a 100% capacity luxury box deal. There was only about like 500 seats. But they got to charge an arm and a leg because it was like a kind of a luxury experience, right? A high-end experience. I think that's the next evolution of sports, that the in-person crowd is going to be a lot smaller and it's going to cost a lot more money. And when you do it like that, then you can start having fun with how big the court is.
Oof. So we're getting even more polarized. We're going even farther down that.
What
Yeah.
Gordon Gekko say? Greed is good.
Greed is good. Greed is the essence. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I actually think that if you take the last two conversations that we've had about jobs and about fairness and equity, and you add it to this one as well, you really do get a sort of idea of how these businesses work and about whether or not where the priorities are and how these priorities are how we list our priorities and what we tend to care about. It will be very, very interesting to see over time the reason for the upcoming rule changes. And I've always referred to football as the Chinese food of American sports, right? You consume it, you can't stop consuming it, but it doesn't really stay with you the way baseball does historically and the rest of it. But in this game, and the way that the NFL deals with this, and I think that by the end of the season, we're going to see overtime rule changes. It's going to be interesting to see how they implement it and why.
John Amici had a great definition yesterday for wokeism. Basically, it's the ability, when you weaponize that word, to shame people for caring. And I know it's harder these days to have fun with some of these things as we politicize some of these things. And next thing you know, we're arguing over the green M&M because things have gotten this dumb in America where we can argue over everything. But I feel like I have my favorite one of these things that I just saw, which was the following. My favorite one. And I think it's allowed to be funny. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, more interested in representation, are going to get a remake in which Snow White is not white. She is Latin. And on the Mark Maron podcast, Peter Dinklage is like, what the fuck?
That didn't happen.
You couldn't have picked a funnier name than Peter Dinklage.
No,
He was straight up like, all the work that I've put in, and we're still doing this.
It's so good.
Which was a great point. But then I actually saw like little people that are in Hollywood throwing their arms up in the air. It's like, you can't take away the Seven Dwarves for us. There's only so many roles for us. What are you doing? This is not helping the cause. We should ask for a franchise with several sequels because that helps the cause.
Strange times, man.
Yeah. And you're not allowed to laugh at much of it. But if you're listening to the Mark Maron podcast, I think we'd all be like, you know what, Dinklage, you're right. Like if we're going to fix something about this representation.
I saw a trailer for the new Cyrano de Bergerac movie, and I think Peter Dinklage is playing Cyrano de Bergerac. And I saw a movie with Gerard Depardieu where he just had like a super long nose. So they're obviously, it's a departure from the source material a little bit, but I'm sure there's an actor with a long nose. It's like, Peter Dinklage, what the fuck?
Stugotz came in here today. He really wanted to get going on Barry Bonds.
Oh, it's enough.
He's proclaimed LeBron back.
Yeah.
After a 10-point victory. He's back in the championship chase because he won against the Nets last night upon the return of Anthony Davis.
Without KD and Kyrie Irving.
But Stugotz has proclaimed it nonetheless. One of the things from last night, I don't think many of you have seen this before, and this, when LeBron clamors for give me my respect at 37 years old in that game, I don't think I've seen a guy on back-to-back possessions steal breakaway dunk before. Maybe I have. I can't remember it. But seeing LeBron last night in back-to-back possessions, just the Nets come down the court, try to pass it, the first entry pass, and he just takes it the other way both times, where you're sleeping on LeBron when he just did it to you. I feel like we covered that more than we've covered the Suns all season. People marveling at LeBron James being LeBron James at 37 after, 10 years where he's dominated, or more than that, dominated the attention in the league.
My only point on the Lakers and LeBron is LeBron's playing still at a very high level. In fact, I would argue that LeBron is the MVP this season. I would.
Oh, come on.
No, without Anthony Davis, I'm telling you, he kept them above water. They still have a chance. And now Anthony is back. And I think we forget they have no margin for error in terms of injuries. None. Zero. Okay, we get that. But we forget how good this team is when Anthony Davis and LeBron are on the court together.
Have they been good this season? Because that would give me reason to forget. Because when they've been on the court together, they've been disappointing this season.
I don't really want to do LeBron for MVP talk.
He had to take it to the extreme when I actually thought he was on his way to the rare good point.
What do you mean?
Go for it. Go for the actual good point that you were trying to make before you got bogged down with LeBron's MVP.
What, the one where I said we forget how good this team can be if Anthony Davis is healthy?
There was no good point.
And then you throw in Russell Westbrook. I mean, I'm telling you, Mike, I care about you. Mike, you're doing the thing, and I'm telling you not to do it.
Throwing in Russell Westbrook is the thing that nukes the entire argument. How about you throw out Russell Westbrook?
I don't know.
You do diminish some of your basketball opinions.
What does that mean, rare good point by Stugotz?
Right. It's insulting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very condescending.
Thank you.
I think he makes great points. He was on it with Aaron Rodgers. He was on it with the Chiefs and Mahomes.
Yep.
Forgive me, Billy. What is the great point that you have? Do you even know what the great point is that
what he said was a good point.
What is it? What is it?
I was editing. So.
Okay, you weren't listening. I thought so. I thought
my guy.
I was pretty
LeBron
sure.
MVP votes.
Yeah.
People are saying, and not Stugotz.
Why do you guys do this thing where you two, the two of you, I'm pointing to Mike, I'm pointing to Dan, where you guys know more about the NBA than anyone else?
Well,
it's not than anybody else. No, Stugotz. It's just more than you. The Whitty just ran the numbers. The Lakers were 14-14 with Anthony Davis.
Okay. I mean, but that team
But you forget how not good they were with Anthony Davis.
You forget that team won a championship with Anthony Davis.
No, I understand.
Shooting 38% in the bubble when he shoots 28% from three everywhere else in a weird season.
My thing is, it's not. Look, there's another age on all those players. There's more wear and tear on those two players primarily, but it is not the same Laker team. It's not a good roster. Russell Westbrook is not a good player for that team. They're turning to DeAndre Jordan and Carmelo Anthony. This is not 2009.
I do think that Stugotz's appraisal is a fair one when he points at you and me and says with tone and all of this and condescension, why do you guys think that you know more about basketball than everyone? I don't. And I don't think that I know more about basketball than Stugotz. I just think that we're not a week removed from you saying that Jokic as an MVP is not someone that anyone in the league would want as their number one. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
I mean, no one would want that guy as their number one. But you're not going to win a title if he's your number one. That's all I'm saying.
But it's not entirely true, Stugotz, because for example, I don't know, but Karl Anthony Towns as a big man, now I don't know what you're saying, because when he was the number one, he was not good enough to win championships. I don't know what you'd have to put around him to do that, but we saw Jimmy Butler. We said the same thing about Jimmy Butler, and they got to the finals. I just saw Anthony Edwards last night go 40 points, 0 assists, and announce that he is going for the MVP next year, and that he is Black Jesus. He said he feels like Black Jesus out there, and I don't know. Can you win? Like, how many people can you do this with, Stugotz? Can you win a championship with Anthony Edwards as your best player, with Ja Morant? When LeBron's playing for the championship as your best player, there aren't many that you can make the argument for.
Right.
There are what, 5 guys that you would say I can win a championship with him as my best player, and you wouldn't have said it of Kawhi before he did it.
No, it's, for me, it's Steph Curry, it's LeBron James.
The guys you've seen do it.
Well, yeah, the guys I've seen do it.
Can Embiid do it?
I don't think Embiid could be your number one guy and you're going to win a title.
Week, though. You thought last week, you said of Embiid, everybody would want him as a number one.
That was last week. This is this week.
Project one guy, Stugotz, that has not won the championship that you think can lead a team to a championship. Just project one.
His guy was Jason
Kevin
Tatum.
Durant.
His guy was Jason Tatum. His guy was Jason Tatum.
Kevin Durant. Project just one guy.
Like a guy who hasn't led his team to a title that I think could lead his team to a title, could be number one.
Yeah.
I would probably say Jason Tatum is that guy. I still believe
married
in
to this
Jason Tatum.
thing.
Yeah,
I would have gone Luka.
That team's been a disaster for
He's
2
been
years now.
He's been a disaster. Look at his efficiencies. Goldsberry.
He hasn't been great. You're right.
No, Goldsberry put out his chart. He's like 70th in the league or something in efficiency. His shot chart is terrible.
I think Ja Morant could be your number one guy, and you could win a title.
Yeah, you build out the team around him. He's certainly.
Can Anthony Edwards?
And we still got to see a little bit more, I think. But back to the Lakers, they were the story of hoops last night. LeBron specifically, and to Stugotz's point, we have more numbers to point to from this season, Woody.
Yeah, so I looked at the two-man lineup of LeBron and Davis playing together. In games that they've played together, they're 9-7.
Mm-hmm.
Their net rating is below 0. It's negative 0.5.
Just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
It's only slightly above where they've been at for the season, which is negative 1.2. So they are losing over the course of the season so far when the two of them play together. So they have not been a good team. And when you say, well, it's the team that won the finals 2 years ago, it barely is. They've torn apart basically the rest of the team to accommodate Russell Westbrook and a bunch of guys that are not helping them.
Lakers Suns play a 7-game series starting right now. You pick the Lakers? You bet the Lakers?
Yes, I do. 100%.
We saw this last year, though. If you want to point to what you've seen, you're totally throwing out the sample of what you saw the Suns do to the Lakers last year and what they've done this year.
It's an interesting way to do the sports analysis that no one can win a championship until Stugotz sees them do so, and even in the case of Durant, not even then. Like it's a pretty good way to not make anyone great until they've actually been great.
I mean, you're not going to take your chances with LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Westbrook in a best-of-7 over the Suns? I would.
I'd bet the Suns. I would absolutely.
Why do you keep chucking Westbrook
because
into
I
this?
love LeBron.
Westbrook is one of the you're actually hurting your argument when you force Westbrook into this.
West played well last night. Anthony Davis was back. What happened?
The fire alarm. It goes off every time we hear a bullshit basketball take.
Birthday to a man from another time, Stugotz, Bob Uecker.
Ueck.
Happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
You know what happens when he says happy birthday to somebody, right? You usually go to the sound. So that means you don't step on the sound.
I did it. I got it in.
Roy, you know, and Dan knows what happens when he throws out a name and that person has a nickname.
I mean, come on, have patience.
Sorry.
Have patience.
Look. In terms of priorities, he's getting Uecken.
It's a fair point.
I was waiting for you.
Point. Yeah.
I know my teammates.
Thank you.
The rhythms and song of the show stop inherently when Stugotz has to, with his special Tourette syndrome, blurt a nickname. Bob Uecker, famously sort of clown prince of baseball and undercurrent of not quite that happy, not as happy as you imagine, like kind of a miserable curmudgeon long before he arrived at 88 years old.
I remember I was like 14 years old when I found out, and was stunned to find out that he actually called Brewers games and not Indians games.
Because of Major League?
Yep. Guardians now. Sorry. Apologies.
It's a fine.
$2 fine and probably a charitable donation of some sort at this point.
Bob Uecker's in the Hall of Fame, and Barry Bonds is not.
Let's do it, Stugotz.
Let's do it. Stugotz has been wanting to do it since we got here.
Broadcaster
as a broadcaster, yes, because he was just okay as a player.
I have a steadfast rule. If you were ever intentionally walked with the bases loaded, you automatically go to the Hall of Fame. That's it. That's all I'm saying on Bonds. I will leave it alone, okay? He's the greatest player I've ever seen. He was so good that with the bases loaded, the other team decided the best option was to walk him.
Intentionally walk him.
It's a fairly unassailable argument, unlike your argument that Russell Westbrook is good. Because you have, I mean,
he's a good number 3. Well,
no, he's not.
Yes, he is.
Barry Bonds.
You'll see.
You'll learn, kiddo.
Wait, Whittingham, before you do Barry Bonds, just know that I just witnessed Stugotz, and he rarely does this. There is only a Super Bowl observations that we have not gotten to from 3 years ago that has been filed under his computer. He just wrote down during the break the date, and Mike and Dan laugh at me about my Lakers take, and he put it under his computer so he could pull it out when the Lakers beat the Suns in the postseason. He wrote down the date.
I can't wait.
He wrote down details, and
You guys are betting on Chris Paul.
he put it aside.
This happened a few short months ago. I don't understand what he's doing.
There was no rust there.
You forgot they played?
Barry Bonds. How did this happen? How did this happen?
You say, how did it happen? And I'm about to tell you how it happened. Somebody reminded me of this yesterday, and I did not remember. Many years ago, I got into a lot of trouble at ESPN because they wanted me on the air of ESPN to do what I did with my Hall of Fame baseball vote in quote-unquote selling it to Deadspin to make a point about just raging against the arbitrary moralities around steroids. And yesterday, I did not know that this was so. I don't know if you guys knew it was so, but I wrestled a great deal with whether or not to do that for only one reason. What if my vote, giving it away to make this look at me protest that's sort of wrapped in integrity, but it's also clown show because I'm tired of all the gatekeepers in sports doing the moralizing about the excellence of others. And a Kevin Grussing pointed out on Twitter, if all of you folks who don't like Bonds and Clemens not getting in want to blame someone, blame this Miami podcaster. Pointing at me because I did not know. I legitimately did not know that after what I did, not only did I get banned, lifetime ban and everything else, but they changed the rules from 15 years you get to get into the Hall of Fame to 10. And I had not considered that as a consequence.
Right. Wow.
But they did it because of what I did. Like when they reformatted everything they did at the Hall of Fame so that could never happen again. I was worried at the time that my vote would be something, because there are only like 630 voters, that I was scared that it would keep out the Deadspin, that they would crowdsource it, and that the crowdsourcing would make a mockery of it. That I was scared of that.
They actually did a good job with the ballot.
Well, but I reserved the right with Deadspin, and I told them this when it happened. Like, if they make a total joke of this, if your readers
Right.
and if they make a total joke of this, like, we're going to have to think of something else to do here, because I'm not okay with denying someone their excellence because I'm doing jazz hands on being performance troll.
But do you think if Bonds has the extra 5 years, he
Yes.
gets in?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Clemens too? Yeah.
I mean, they were so close, and
Right.
it's been growing every year, and the tide has changed on all this stuff. And the other thing I think people realize, and it's why they're so mad today, because, man, Barry Bonds would be in if he simply smiled the way Ortiz did. Like, this has nothing to do with excellence.
It
This-
didn't help Clemens and Bonds that they were like notorious buttholes.
But this is exactly why I did what I did, right? I didn't like the gatekeep. I didn't like the idea of sports writers, us, gas bags, being the ones who could diminish eternally. Stugotz, did you see how happy Ortiz was?
Yes.
This moment, you do not deny these people. They get the fountain of youth. They get to be immortal. They get to, whatever they didn't celebrate or enjoy while they were doing it, 5 years later, they get to be like, oh, wait, in retirement's been hard. 5 years later, or 10, they get to be like, okay, the thing I dedicated my life to, sculpting this craft, it has the approval of others. You saw how happy Ortiz was.
So happy, and I was happy for him. Did you see that shirt? What a shirt. That's a Hall of Fame shirt right there. I mean,
Have you guys read some of the reported details out of the Dominican on why and how he got shot by a drug lord? Like, reportedly, he was reportedly, okay, because I don't know what's true here.
It was mistaken identity.
It was not mistaken identity.
What do you mean?
From the reports.
Hold on.
From the reports.
Hold on. If you think David Ortiz is instantly recognizable in the DER, you got another thing coming.
just be careful, Gus.
If they're going to shoot Poppy, be careful.
Just be careful. Yeah.
Just go
You're no Big Poppy.
check there's only one Big Poppy, and he's my father. If you guys want to read about this, because I don't know what's true here, it's not hard to find some of the details on what happened with David Ortiz, but there is a smile. Put it on the poll, Guillermo. Would Barry Bonds have gotten into the Hall of Fame if he smiled more?
What if the hit person was trying to murder the mom from Good Times instead?
That would be
perfect.
I think she was already dead. I think she was already dead. I think she was already dead at that point.
We can't rule out that it was an attempted hit on Florida Evans
by a drug lord who reportedly
she was dead at the time.
Didn't like that his lover was getting a car bought by David Ortiz for her.
I love the fact that he said hit person. Like a woman's going to take him out or something.
Look, man, I said the old baseball team in Cleveland. I gotta mind myself right now.
I found funny. It was funny. Stugotz, you can't be what we've been as an entertainment vehicle over the years and learned what we learned about steroid use and cheaters and the amount of fuel that provided for this medium to just yell about the cheaters and then not laugh at the idea that yesterday people are outraged that these guys don't get in when we've chased them. Tim Kirkson was chasing Roger Clemens across a parking lot in like his saddest moment as a journalist.
Wait, that's their last time?
Like, what a
people are upset.
What a change. Like, what do you guys do? What do you mean you're outraged now? Like, you've hated the...
Because people aren't actually outraged. It's just the thing that they do. No one's actually upset about this.
Billy, I will tell you, it is strange that the best hitter, best player, and the best pitcher of our generation, neither of them are in the Hall of Fame. It's just odd. I'm not mad about it. I'll get over it. I'll move on. It's just weird.
It's
you
not,
know?
though. Like, they cheated, Stugotz. Like, it wasn't like an accidental thing. Like, they cheat. You don't understand how they didn't get in. Like, you have to understand how they didn't get voted in.
I understand it. I just don't, like, for me to have a bunch of writers determine that based on their moralities, like, no, I don't like it. I don't like how we're doing the Hall of Fame.
But does the Hall of Fame even really matter, honestly?
It does to them.
Yeah.
It does to the people voting, but, like, this idea, like, you can't tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. Like, yes, you can. There's the internet. Like, who's going to the Hall of Fame? It's in the middle of nowhere, New York. Like, no one's going to the Hall of Fame to learn about baseball. I've been to museums. I look at the things I leave. How many times do I learn the history of everything in the museum? Like, very rarely.
Every single time? You don't go to museums and learn?
Whitney loves a museum.
I've never been to a sports Hall of Fame. I feel like it would be an incredibly educational and enriching experience. Like
I went to Cooperstown, Chris, and I am telling you, Billy, I am telling you right now, you as a baseball fan would love a visit to Cooperstown. You would love it.
Yeah,
you would love the Baseball Hall of Fame.
I'm not going to be upset. Like, oh, I'm looking around. Oh, Barry Bonds, his face is in here. Fuck! I can't learn about baseball today. Oh!
Who cares?
Do you think, Billy, if you had to guess when you say, because what I was objecting to many years ago is the arbitrary moralities when we don't know, Stugotz, who was cheating and who wasn't. Billy, do you think that David Ortiz did not?
No, he shouldn't have. Look, if Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens shouldn't get in, neither should David Ortiz. Like, that's just
first ballot.
Yeah, he shouldn't be getting in if they're not getting in. It's the same thing.
David Ortiz never failed a drug test, but
David Ortiz did fail a drug test.
Well, reportedly, Mitchell Report says that David Ortiz did fail a drug test. Mike Schur is on here because Poppy's his best or his favorite player yesterday, saying he did not fail a drug test outside of the report of the Mitchell Report that may or may not be accurate. But Barry Bonds has also not failed a drug test.
Well, neither did A-Rod. And A-Rod was suspended for like a year and a half. So the failed drug test isn't really like what we should be basing it on.
I would put not only Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame, but Greg Anderson, his trainer, for going to jail for defending that secret.
The Best Friends Hall of Fame?
No,
yes.
The Best
First
Friends,
ballot.
The Best Friends Hall of Fame, first ballot. And also just the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'd put him on the bust with Barry Bonds. Like just on his shoulder or somewhere instead of an asterisk.
Behind bars.
I'd just put them both in. And frankly, I'd put Tom Brady in with Guerrero as well while I was at it.
That guy should have a statue. I mean, seriously.
But it's not surprising, right? It's not surprising that competitionaholics would look for every advantage in the pharmacy or anywhere else to if there's a fountain of youth out there. And if historically, in your 30s, as a baseball player, before the medicine got here, you start failing and flailing as a baseball player. Now, that didn't happen to Barry Bonds, but David Ortiz didn't become great. David Ortiz was a Minnesota Twin.
Average. He was average there.
Was he even average? I think he was below average. I'm guessing that as a Minnesota Twin, I don't know this because I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but I am guessing that before the age of 30, that David Ortiz may have been below average WAR. I'm not sure.
His OPS plus is 108, which is just above average. So like slightly above average. And then it jumps up to 148 over the course of his Red Sox career.
So he was a slightly above average player as a Minnesota Twin. And then after 30 years old, is that when that started to happen, that growth?
So he moved to Boston at age 27 and was an all-star at age 28. So it was around then, which is around the time that a player hits his prime.
Yeah, but this is different. Like with the Twins, I think he had 20 homers. That was the most he had. And then the next season, he goes to 31. And after that, it's 41, 47, 54, 48. Like, it's ridiculous what he did. He wasn't that in Minnesota. He wasn't.
Billy, as a guy who hates the Atlanta Braves and has loved the Marlins all his life, I thought another omission yesterday that was fairly obvious that it evidently that we don't care about because it's not in the steroids category is Andrew Jones should be a Hall of Famer. Like, you can make an argument this is one of the best center fielders ever.
He has time, right?
He does have time.
Yeah, I got his autograph one time. He got mad at me because my watch was on his window, and he was worried that I was going to scratch his car. Yeah, it was after a game. Yeah, Andrew Jones. Good autograph, Andrew Jones. Look it up. Google Andrew Jones's autograph. Very symmetrical. The A and the J, very similar, the way that he does it. Yeah. Penmanship, something that's gone down. Yeah. Andrew Jones, good autograph. I'm telling you right now. See, Dan, Google it. Go to the Google.
Well, can you tell us more about this interaction?
I look at this and the symmetry just pops off.
I didn't even get the full name. I got like a shorter version, like an A and then like a J and like a little thing.
But anger, residual anger.
No. Let's not. No, Dan. I see where we're going with this. We're out to make Andrew Jones this angry man. No, not the case. Let me paint a picture for you. Pro Player Stadium. A young Billy Gill was there after the game. Not an often occurrence, but it was one of those days where I was waiting around as cars were leaving and as the players. And, I was a young lad. I liked autographs. I don't know. Let's say 9 3/4, more or less. I don't know. I was like, no, probably a little older. Let's say like a 10-year-old, right? Andrew Jones is there. See a car drive by. He drives out. We're like, Andrew. Lots of Braves fans. There's lots of Braves fans that would go to the game. Andrew wanted to get his attention, his autograph. And he had a Porsche. That's what they say, the rich people. Porsche. So he was driving a Porsche, didn't stop, but he did a little point, and he pulled off to the side into the parking lot, started signing autographs. Very nice gesture. I gave a ball. He signed it for me. He signed it. But then the crowd saw that it was happening, and they pushed me up against his car while he was signing my autograph. I was wearing a watch. It was one of those rare days when I've had phases. I don't know if you guys – I don't see a lot of wrist wear here. Oh, wait, no. Actually, there's a lot of people here wearing watches, but I was wearing a watch. Yeah, the majority of the people in this room are wearing watches. I was wearing a watch, and I was pushed up against his car, hit the glass of the roll-down window, and then went down, and he's like, oh, like freaking out because I'm assuming it was a rental car because he's, from out of town. I don't know why we'd have a Porsche here in Miami just waiting for him, and thought that I had scratched his car, but I had not. But nevertheless, very kind gesture of him to stop and sign autographs for the children, I being one of them. And again, great penmanship if you look it up.
Do you have any of those autographs still? Did you keep them?
Oh, yeah, I have the Andrew Jones one in a box. It says Andrew Jones on the box. I'm going to bring it tomorrow.
How many do you have? Like, how many of those autographs did you?
Of Andrew Jones, just one.
All of them. All autographs that you have. Because when I do word association with Andrew Jones, the first thing that comes to mind is not best center fielder ever. It's the Gold Club, the strip club trial that was in Atlanta, and him testifying that he had sex with multiple women at the same time and couldn't remember any of their names.
Typically, 10-year-olds don't have access to this information, though, so this is news to me.
I imagine it's news to a lot of people listening here, but if you think you don't have access to the life of what it can be if you're an athlete, having so much sex that you're having orgies and don't remember anyone's name is a pretty good indoctrination to what sports stardom can be. And Andrew Jones was in the big leagues. Andrew Jones was hitting home runs in World Series at the age of 20.
Yankee Stadium. He hit 2, right? 2 in 1 game. I mean, he's great. He's great. He should be in the Hall of Fame. He will be in the Hall of Fame. As Billy said, he has time.
But Billy's also right that it's just a museum. And
it's a Hall of Fame, Dan.
But it's being able to introduce yourself as Hall of Famer and other people to introduce you as Hall of Famer. It's something that other other contemporaries that were nearly as good, because I don't think anybody was as good, get to say. And it's an accolade that they yearn for. I get it.
I think that's for like borderline people though, right? That like need the like validation, like, oh, I'm a Hall of Famer. Like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, people know they're great. They need that.
You don't think it's like going through medical school and at the end of it, you're crushing all your grades. You don't get to be called doctor?
I mean, if you're crushing all your grades, why don't you become a doctor?
I believe Hall of Fame gives you an immortal status that is sort of official. Kurt Schilling should also be in the Hall of Fame. I'm guessing he's not in the Hall of Fame just because of his politics, right? Like that's another reason that these voters, they can separate the excellence from any number of things that
probably being kind to him by just labeling it as politics. There were things over there that didn't necessarily just feel political.
Mike, you're right. But if you're judging just on-field performance, he should be in the Hall of Fame. And that's what it is,
Kurt
right?
Schilling?
Yes.
Yes.
Just on-field performance.
I think he was on his way, and then last year, because he didn't get in, he actively told voters, don't vote for me. I don't want this anymore. And they listened because his voting percentage went down, and his final year was at 58.6%.
If I throw to the audience right now of people who like sports, how do you think that they think of the 630 voters who are applying this kind of morality, all of it, right? I don't want to have the conversation again about Ty Cobb being a racist, but the idea that the gatekeepers are actively altering the imprint of history, just recorded history, which should be factual, but we can't get to facts, whether it's critical race theory on recorded history or the Hall of Fame. How does the listener right now feel about the voter who cannot separate art from artist? That the Hall of Fame inherently, in order to cross that threshold, the people gatekeeping cannot, will not, do not think they have the responsibility to separate art from artist. I don't know the answer to that because Billy says we are in a place where outrage is fake. It's just something to yell about on social media. You're not actually outraged. You're not going to hold back dollars.
Where are all these people when the ratings come in for watching baseball games? Not that many people care about baseball. Like, no one's watching baseball game at the rate that they're getting angry about the Hall of Fame votes.
You think outrage is more popular than baseball?
100% outrage is more popular than baseball.
Not than football, though.
No, nothing's more popular than football.
Outrage might be America's favorite pastime.
Put it on the poll at LeBatard Show. Is outrage now the national pastime? I have admired the work of this man for a long time. And it's not just because Brandon Flowers is saying he was a defensive lineman playing wide receiver, and Nnamdi Asomugha says toughest guy to bring down one-on-one in the entire league. But he's also doing interesting things with I Am Athlete and grabbing his own power and doing something with it. So check out his podcast, I Am Athlete. It has a lot of honest access to athletes speaking more freely than you're used to hearing them speak, because a lot of guys have to hide in the shadows and don't trust the media members who are delivering their stories. So Brandon, thank you for being on with us. And what part, when you rank this stuff on why it is that you want to do this, I know you're a businessman and you want to make money, but when you get into this field of showing people another side of athletes, what are you trying to do with I Am Athlete?
Yeah, I mean, well, first, thanks for having me. And, you know, it's an honor to sit down with you. I can't believe it's been so long, so I appreciate you. To answer your question, create a safe place for athletes. You said it, you know, this relationship between player and media, it can be toxic at times, but it's important for us to work together. And I don't think we've figured that out yet and perfected that. You know, there's only so many Dan LeBatards in the world. I think that's why one of the reasons why, you know, people respect you and enjoy coming on your show. You have, you know, former athletes, current athletes that will come on and moonlight here and there. And that's because you've always done it the right way, you know, and you've been able to hold athletes accountable, have those tough conversations in a way that keeps them human, right? And so I Am Athlete exists just to continue things like what you started, and other people out there has done a great job, is just continue to create safe places for athletes to share their stories.
I have found yours fascinating, right? Because you very publicly did some growing up with some pain and some details that got out there that had to be unpleasant to you as you navigated a terrain that was less open and vulnerable on this mental health stuff than we are now. You are 10
Right.
years too fast to this space where your messiness got out there really uncomfortable in public as you tried to explain to people, hey, I'm vulnerable too. I know you see all these the muscles and stuff, but I've got some frailties in here.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, but I don't even look at it that way. I think I was built for that moment and built for, being a part of championing this conversation around mental health, right? Where, I didn't even think twice about, what it would do to my career, how hard it would be, how the media would perceive me. I was just going off my gut. I was going off of my experiences. Like, how the hell do I go from struggling on the field, off the field, my interpersonal relationships, the way I was, sitting down for 3 months, going to McLean Hospital, diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, going through dialectical behavior therapy, mentalization therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, dialectical, I already said DBT, self-assessment, and so many other things. And all of a sudden, my life is drastically transformed. And when I felt that shift, I said, oh my goodness, I need to share this with the world, and I need to help bring this to light, and be one of the voices and one of the faces to it. So for 10 years, we pounded the pavement and done a lot of the tough work alongside of people who've been doing it for a long time. And now we're in a space now where it's a everyday conversation. It's not as taboo anymore.
How did you get to the place from, I imagine, patterns, imprinting, culture, family, whatever? I imagine, I'm making presumptions. You tell me where I'm wrong. I am not to talk about my feelings.
Right.
I do not want the tools that are necessary to be sensitive guy or guy who cries to, wait a minute, you're going to give me tools that give what I have a name so that this darkness can lift and I can be less alone with it.
Right. I'm gonna be honest, man, like, it's not for everyone. I think it was just in me. It's like a part of my innate ability to be able to lead and, to run into the tough conversations and the challenge. Like, I didn't even think twice. I didn't care. I had my publicist like, no, what are you doing? Don't say anything. Friends and family, don't say anything. You know what this will do to you. I guess back then I thought, hell, I'm a baller. I'm still going to catch 100 balls a year and 1,400 yards, and potentially score 10 touchdowns. So I didn't think about, what can happen by championing this thing and being honest. I just wanted to help, if I'm being honest, man.
Where were the epiphanies for you, though, right? Because I got to imagine that along the path, and I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but you had some stuff, right?
Right.
You had incidents that were public and messy, and Brandon Marshall became guy who's tough to trust because why is he this volatile?
That's right. That's right. I mean, on the field, just the things that we see with a lot of athletes. I mean, some of that stuff was just, the passion and part of the game. And there was times where I crossed the line, right? Like the emotion and, snapping on the sideline, even in practice, snapping in practice, a coach trying to coach me. And maybe he took the Bruce Arians route and talked to me in a certain way that, I felt was disrespectful, and the way I responded to that, in my interpersonal relationships, with my wife, right? Like, those are situations where it's like, how do you deal with being 24, 25, new to in marriage and learning how to communicate. So it was like this perfect storm of everything happening and then all playing out on ESPN. It's that right there. And, one off season, I looked at Ricky Williams and I said, man, do you think I'm bipolar? Because I saw your documentary, Run, Ricky, Run. And I'm like, how do you go from living in the tent in Lamb, Australia, or wherever you were, to now you're like one of my favorite teammates. You're this phenomenal person. I'm sitting in a cold tub with you and you're freaking reading a book, right? Like, it's so peaceful, right? And he said, no, Brandon, I don't think that you're bipolar. I just think that, you say the things we all want to say and shouldn't say and know not to say. And I couldn't control myself. So that conversation with Ricky was important, and it was it was definitely a turning point for me because I was able to witness it. I was seeing the guy that was at McLean Hospital. I seen the guy living in the tent. I seen the guy walk away from millions of dollars. But then I seen him on the other side, like phenomenal. The way he controlled himself, the way he led the team, right? The way he spoke about mental health, the way he spoke about people. And so that offseason, during the year of the lockout, 2011, I found myself at McLean Hospital. Went through a neurological evaluation to see if I was even capable of change, if I can control myself, what was going on in my brain, a clinical evaluation. And, it came out that, yeah, you're capable of change. And, borderline personality disorder is an emotional disorder, something that you can treat and something that you can get better from.
What are the things you think of from that 3-month period that represent illumination, epiphany, relief, the greatest things that you were given there?
Yeah, oh man, just the skills and tools to be able to control my emotions, right? Like I remember playing for the Dolphins and it was horrible, it was terrible, and all my feelings were valid. And yes, America, I'm telling you right now, my feelings were valid back then, but I knew the way I was responding to some of these things were wrong, right? One day I walk in, I said, I'm not going to say anything. I knew the offensive game plan was trash. I knew I did my best. And I'm going to walk into this facility and I'm not going to say anything because when I speak, I become the problem, right? Or if I respond, I become the problem. And I walked in there and coach said something. It's like, oh, what the hell are you doing here? Da, 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 da. And I was like, man, that was a terrible call. And I grabbed my Gatorade bottle and I threw it and I walked out. And I remember walking out and I was like, holy crap, I need help. Like I literally walked in today saying I wasn't going to say anything. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't control myself, couldn't control my emotions. And so going through, 3 months of intense therapy and these group therapies and learning dialectical behavior therapy, the skills and tools to be able to self-regulate, and being in those moments and being able like, oh shit, like I can control myself now. Or I wanted to say this, but I didn't, right? So it was just the entire 3 months it was amazing. It was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had. It was one of the toughest things I've had to go through, but it was amazing.
Is football well equipped to deal with sensitive and vulnerable?
I think from a shell, like, yes, there's yes and no. There are some amazing programs in place. We have access to a lot, but there's this dynamic between player and organization, player and coaches, that it's not a real safe place for athletes and players to open up and have those conversations. So they have programs in place, but can you trust these programs? Can I trust that if I have this conversation with this therapist that it's not going to get back to the team and the team's not going to use that against me when it's time to sit at the table to renegotiate a contract? Or maybe they'll cut me. Maybe they think that, it's diminished capacity, diminished potential, right? But there's so many people living with this. So from that aspect, yes, general manager to general manager, coach to coach, right? There's some coaches and some teams, some organizations that embrace it. Some teams don't, right? They have systems in place. They have people in place to be able to deal with these things. And their intentions are right, and they're in the right place. It's coming from a good place. And there's some that's just old school, right? And it's reflective of the world, right? It's 320 million Americans. It affects all, 100 million Americans, living with something, dealing with something, and everybody has their own opinions and their own perspective on it. So it's the same thing in the NFL. Now the NFL has programs in place, they have people in place, just 3 years ago, where they mandated that every team has a mental health practitioner on site. When I was playing, playing for the Miami Dolphins, you had one, and then the Chicago Bears had one, then they fired them, and then they didn't have one, right? So we still have a lot of work to do. I think the NFL is taking it serious now. I've been having some conversations with them, and obviously the NFLPA, but we have a lot of work to do. I think it's more so like the Brian Dawkins of the world, the Ricky Williams of the world, really galvanizing the locker room and having these conversations, that making it comfortable for guys to stand up and say, I need help. Like here right now, we have 21 college athletes training for combine. You know, we house them, we feed them, we do all their medical. We have, you know, ex-Capital here, you know, the ex-general manager of the Tampa Bay Bucks is here to help these guys deal with these things. And we're talking about mental health even today. So, like, this is a big deal, but it starts with what's happening outside of the NFL to me, because this conflict is a conflict of interest when it comes to a player and their medical.
The distrust is a big thing that I don't think people understand. Everything is pushing the athlete to get on the field, including the athlete. And so the pressure envelops, and I think the whole place is a mental health minefield. The sport, right, the occupation, the distrust of the doctors. But let's play some sound here from I Am Athlete, and they had Antonio Brown in, and I'm telling you, they have more honest conversations, unfiltered, than you're used to hearing when people, it seems like these guys forget they're in front of cameras and they're just talking in a way you do not hear when they're being formally interviewed. So Antonio Brown was in, and let's hear some of the sound from Brandon Marshall and the group talking to Antonio Brown.
So what you saying what I did was wrong? What are you saying?
I'm not saying
so what are you saying? What's your point of it? An NFL Super Bowl team coach told a guy on the team who playing hurt, get the out of here, and you telling me you, Brandon Marshall, would have told him, I would have got close to him and started talking to him.
Let me tell you, so here go my thing. I know what I want. I'm trying to get another 40 million. So what I'm gonna do, because if I give him that, if I take off unstrap my boom, peace sign in MetLife, now they in control.
Yes.
I lose, because now it's me versus
I love that you said
the media.
I love that. B. Marshall just said he would have did what he had to do so he could get that what he had to get. So you telling me you're compromising your integrity?
I told you he's control.
Yeah, he control. You a footballer.
That's why I feel like y'all but that's why I said
you said I was disruptive.
Which is it can be a good
No,
thing.
listen, being disruptive is fucking something up when something going right.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
The problem is what he said with mental health. Football players will always have mental health problems because what you said,
I'm with you.
So as football players, mental health going to sustain, they're willing to be treated the wrong way to get what they got to get. The Hall of Fame, them bad.
That's why I said the disruptive, because like
that's
this.
not disruptive. Some people, B. Marshall willing to do anything to become, to achieve his goal, which is greatness, greatness. But at the same time, what's your integrity in regards of what you want to do to get there?
Let's play the sound also of Antonio Brown, because I don't like what he's doing here to you, Brandon. He's calling you a soul seller. He's saying that he's got more integrity than you do. Let's hear the sound that we have here. Again, it's a very good podcast. It's unusually honest. Let's hear the sound.
This is where I'm saying you're disruptive. You say you stand on principles. This is who you are. If the conversation is, we got to start respecting our athletes. When he said that, you looked at him and said, Coach, you just disrespected me. Go in the locker room, because this is what I would have did. If I'd have went in the locker room and did my press conference, 2 million people watching, I would have said, listen, I'm no longer playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because what I stand on, there's no way I can walk into that locker room when this coach just talked to me the way he talked to me. I don't respect that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now you're putting it back on them.
At the end of the day, my boy, I got to look myself in the mirror. When nobody ain't there, and I got to be good with myself. The problem with people is they worried about how someone reacts. You worried about how this look, how he did. Yeah. Listen, you do what your heart tell you to do. If you don't do what your heart tell you to do, at the end of the day, you're going to have some drama in your mind because you felt outside of yourself.
Brandon, I can feel you wanting to shake him by the shoulders and be like, put the pride down. I was you. You're going to lose. You cannot beat this machine. This machine is going to eat you up. You're trying to fight the machine, and you just walked out of the arena. You walked out of the fight with your integrity, but you're not going to win here. You will lose.
100%. I mean, and that's why I was using the word disruptive. He and I got caught up on that word disruptive. What I was saying is, when you're disruptive, right, you know, if I'm with him, if he said, you know what, the way we treat the athlete is wrong, and he can state why, and he's willing to walk out of the stadium, walk away from his career, right, to push that conversation forward, or not push the conversation forward, just say, I'm no longer subjecting myself to this, then I can respect that. But if you're saying, you know, I want to continue to play football, then you have to learn how to work within the constructs of the NFL and within the constructs of the system. And I think that's where he and I weren't seeing eye to eye, right? Like, man, this is the NFL. This is a monster. This is a beast, right? And they're going to protect the shield, you know, and they're not going to let one person bring down the NFL or, you know, talk bad about the NFL. So, you know, I just want him to have more clarity on his approach. You know, he's a guy that stands on principles and he understands what he wants to put out there. And, you know, he's going to have to deal with the good, the bad, the ugly.
It's such a trigger, though, and it's such a mind bleep. Like, he is trying to play through pain. He has remarkable pain threshold, and now you've disrespected him, too, by not believing him. And yet his resume is littered with stuff, Brandon. Like, he's right. Blown it out on 4 teams. Like, that's a lot of different coaches. That's Tomlin. That's Belichick. That's Arians. Right. Like, that's a lot of different coaches that he's just, you know, at the end, it's self-destructive behavior. That can't be disputed.
Yeah. Well, again, like there's a lot of guys that feel the way Antonio Brown feels, for being honest, right? You know, and there's a lot of guys, you know, you saw Bruce Arians after he put his hands on Adams' his safety. You can't do that. These are grown men. Some of these men make more money than you. You know, some of these guys are just as accomplished as you are and successful, right? You know, there's this hierarchy really doesn't exist anymore. This is the coach. This is the player. What it is now, we're coworkers. Right now, we understand your job and you lead the team, but when it comes down to communication and actually dealing with stress, dealing with problems, we got to talk on the same playing field, and that doesn't always happen. And then there's the medical side to things. We talked about that already, where there's a lack of trust there just because of the business around it. They use those things against you. But the thing that we all have to understand, and I had to learn this, I didn't get this the first 4.5, 5 years of my career, and that's how to be diplomatic in all of this stuff. If you want to be in the NFL, right? Now, if you want to be disruptive and like a Colin Kaepernick said, I'm willing to risk it all, then I'm for you. You know, I respect that. I respect somebody who's willing to say, I'm willing to walk away from $30 million because I care more about my integrity. I care more about my principles and what I stand on. But if we're also saying we want to play and stay within, you know, this construct, then we have to know and learn how to navigate.
What is the most disrespected you've ever felt by a coach or organization?
Ooh, oh man. I'll be honest, man. Dan, that's what I had to learn. Like, I didn't even let nobody even get there. Dan, I just came in with so much energy, right? Where coaches knew, like, it didn't matter if it was the owner of a team, a general manager. It was like, listen, I'm here to work my ass off. I love it. You know, I love playing football. I'm going to give you my all, but just don't BS me. And I came off with that energy so people knew how to deal with me. And that's why it was hard to deal with me the first couple of years of my career. And I had to learn, like, oh, like there's a way of approaching these conversations. There's a way of being, there's a certain way you have to conduct yourself within a team, right? You know, like my actions, it doesn't only affect me, it affects, you know, 100 other people, you know, and that's just something I had to learn, right? You know, I just thought about me first, and, you know, football wasn't business, it was personal. It saved my life. It changed the trajectory of not only my life, but my entire family, my mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters, my children, my children's children, right? And I had to understand that, you know, it was a business and there were so many other people involved.
Did you ask Antonio, like, what are you doing with saying who on that team is better than me? Like, why are you doing that on the way out to Brady, to Godwin, to Gronk, to Mike Evans? Like, why the need to tell everybody there ain't nobody there better than I am? Like, you're not thinking about others at all there.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, it's just, man, I think for AB right now, there's so much happening around him, so many conversations. Like you said, there's the mental health side, there's the Bruce Arians conversation, there's the medical, there's even those statements, the Tom Brady, the Mike Evans, like what he said. And for me, it's just like, that's what I was the conversation I was trying to have with Antonio Brown was, you know, what are you trying to prove? What's your message, and how to relay that message where it's clear and people can actually receive it, right? And there was one part in the conversation where I was like, oh, you and Kanye have a lot in common. And he took it a whole nother way. And I was like, no, what I was trying to say is like Kanye West, the way he communicates, sometimes you get lost, the message is lost because of how he's saying it, right? And so hopefully he can get to a point where he can actually clearly define what he's trying to say, what he's trying to do, so we can all receive it. But on the other hand, there's other things that come with Antonio Brown, and he has to clear those things up, and he has to work on those things.
I was bummed out when I heard that Channing Crowder and Fred Taylor. I also thought to myself, oh, look, business has made an appearance. These guys didn't realize how valuable this all was at the very beginning. But I was bummed out that you guys didn't continue working together. Can you tell us what happened there in a way that's not invasive?
Oh, you are right there. You just said it's business, right? Long story short, my wife and I invested $11 million over the last 2 years in building this company, House of Athlete, I Am Athlete. We have almost 100, staff members, and we see, the value in what we're doing, and the vision that we have. It didn't align with them, and so. They decided that, going and doing their own thing was best for them. So I don't want to get into all the details there, but that's high level stuff. It's just business, right? Like they have an opportunity to do the same things that you're doing, that what I'm trying to do, and they can own it all.
Oh, but it hurts though. That stuff can be, when you're building stuff with people, you got to choose your wife, obviously, but you could say it's business, but still, man, these things are also personal.
Yeah, like I said, but nothing I do is real. I'm still learning. I talked about this in football. Like football was personal, and it wasn't never a business. I had to learn that, and I got to a place where I was able to navigate through that. And it's the same thing in business, man. Like this is my passion: creating safe places for athletes. You got House of Athlete. We have 150 guys that trains here in the off season at this location. We have Tampa opening, Dallas opening, and really the focus. Like even on Wednesday, there's no training here. I have mental health practitioners on site right now. I have people here for personal development here. This is my why. You can come in, you're going to help you jump higher, run faster, reach your goals, your physical goals. But I'm pushing you to this Wednesday class and this entire experience on Wednesday where we can help you grow there. Then on the I Am Athlete side, there aren't too many safe places, that exist for athletes that come in and have the time to really tell their stories. And it's not the got you moments. Like I'm gonna sit down and before you come on and tell you, hey, this is what we want to talk about. You'll be prepared there, and we'll have that accountability. Even like you saw the banter back and forth. That's the locker room, right? So yeah, it is personal. And it does sting when you lose people, and when people go in the other direction, for good, bad, or the ugly. And that's something that we have to deal with now.
This Brandon Marshall, with his life experience, with his wisdom, goes back and says what to the guy entering the league as Brandon Marshall?
Exactly what we're talking about, man. This is big business, $16 billion industry. Back then it was 10, and understanding how to navigate through it, right? I'm watching Larry Fitzgerald and how he navigates, the business and his relationships. Dan, if I'm being honest, man, like, it was personal for me, it's like getting those calls when I'm at the University of Central Florida and I got $4,000 of Pell Grant, $2,000 one semester, $2,000 next semester. And I got to send that home to my mom, to help pay her rent, to keep her off the streets, like that shit's personal. And so I always, that's what drove me, when it was 5 a.m. mat drills. And I'm tired. My tongue is on the floor. I can't take another step. What I always think about was my mom has to eat. My siblings, my brother and sister, they have to eat. That was me. That was all on me, right? And so I played with that chip on my shoulder, and I approached it that way. And so, I'm actually proud of everything that I've gone, like everything I've been able to be able to overcome and accomplish. But, and now I'm in a position to tell my kids and even my nephew, he has some of the same emotional challenges. He's a freaking stud. He's an amazing person. But I see him on the field. Sometimes he wants to throw his hammer on the floor and on the ground. Like, no, we're not doing that. Right. Because you got to learn from what everything I've gone through. And so that's that's the conversation that I would have with myself is like, look, I get why you're successful. I get why you are the football player you are, but those same things that make you great are the same things that can drag you down and will drag you down if you don't get a hold of it.
What is your relationship with confrontation?
Ooh, good question. My relationship with confrontation, I'm not afraid of it. I think when you approach it the right way, you know, it makes relationships stronger. It makes you better. And so I think confrontation is good. There's a book that I read a long time ago and I recommend it for a lot of people, Difficult Conversations, you know, and it's like how to have those difficult conversations and how to validate, you know, someone else's opinions and thoughts and emotions, and then find a place where you can compromise. So I embrace that because I think that's where relationships are built. And that's where I think, you know, deeper relationships are created.
Off the top of your head, when I say football confrontations to you, memorable ones that you have had, what are the things that come to mind?
Ooh, Jay Cutler. There's some confrontation there. Cuddy, just our entire relationship, like we pushed each other every single day. And, you know, so there was some confrontation there. Confrontation with Josh McDaniels, you know, before I got traded to the Miami Dolphins. That was a big confrontation the entire year. Yeah, that was tough for me. That was a tough year. Other confrontation, Chicago Bears, you know, that last year, the media. And it's just, you know, I was like the media darling my first 2 years there. And then, you know, I was just the same person that wore my emotions on my sleeve when it was, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, I never changed. And that's where I learned, like, man, when you're losing, you have to simmer down a little bit. You have to put a cap on the personality a little bit. It just doesn't go over well. Like when we were winning and we have a bad game or a bad moment, I'll get in front of cameras and say, that wasn't good enough. Chicago, we're going to be better. Like that was trash. And fans, yeah, you know? And then when you're losing and you only won 2 games and you're not really balling out, you have that same energy. You're like, oh my goodness, cancer in the locker room, right? So that was huge for me. That actually was devastating. That was probably one of my toughest moments and something I still haven't gotten over, if I'm being honest, you know, because I really love Chicago. You know, I'm a blue collar type person. That's a blue collar city. The city embraced me, you know, leaving the Dolphins and all the turmoil there. And, you know, I was able to come into some amazing things in the community, balled out, and it's like football royalty. And for I thought I was going to retire a Bear, right? And then for everything that happened the way it did so quickly that last year, it was devastating to me.
We will get you out on this. I just want to fill in the blank here, play word association, just fill in the blank. So the toughest teammate Brandon Marshall ever had was blank.
Toughest, when you say toughest, meaning like tough, like on the field tough?
Pain threshold, just marveling at like, man, that dude does a lot to get out there, and everyone should be a little bit afraid of how much pain he can withstand.
Toughest teammate. Gosh, man, you put me on the spot with this. I wish you sent these to me before.
We'll come back. We'll come back on it. Let's see the defensive back. I'll give you a handful of them. The defensive back that, look, I'm Brandon Marshall. I'm not sweating anybody, but the defensive back was like, okay, I got my handfuls there. This is going to be the top of the challenge.
Yeah, Al Harris. Oh my goodness, stud muffin. Darrelle Revis, the best. You know, Champ Bailey, man. Crazy battles in practice, you know, so those are the top 3 for me. And there's others, but those are the top 3. Al Harris gave me problems. Champ Bailey was the best, would never let me catch a deep ball on him, you know, and he's the reason why I actually played wide receiver, because when the Denver Broncos drafted me, they wanted to put me at tight end, and they gave me through camp to prove to them I can play wide receiver. And he walked up to Coach Shanahan and said, this kid's a wide receiver. And I never saw tight end after that.
The wide receiver I respect the most is blank.
Ooh. You got to put Jerry Rice up there, just his body of work. I love his work ethic. I love his mindset. Jerry Rice is up there. But if I had to say one wide receiver I respect the most would be Rod Smith. You know, how he played the game, the man he was in the locker room, the man he was off the field, now even his transition. So like his entire career, during football, post-career, Rod Smith.
The one time I remember the game plan being the most shit was blank.
Miami Dolphins.
Just the whole thing. The whole thing. The whole.
Dan, I know y'all look like I know I already said hear you back then. You like, what is Brandon Marshall doing and saying? I wish I knew how to respond back then because I would have been able to highlight how bad it was. But yes, Dan, yes, it was bad. Coach Sperano was awesome. I loved him, but he just needed a little bit more help. A little on the offensive side.
The coach who least understood me was blank.
Oh, man. So Coach Shanahan understood me there. Josh McDaniels came in. I think he understood me, but probably wanted me to do things his way. I think Coach Sperano, phenomenal. Chicago Bears, Lovie Smith, Trustman. No, all my coaches, man, I think all my coaches understood me. The offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, Coach Henne. Oh, my goodness.
Brian Daboll? Did you have an experience with Brian Daboll?
I probably had an experience with Brian Daboll, but that's my guy. I still talk to him. Most of my coaches I still talk to, even Josh McDaniels. Like, I still have his number. I talk to him. You know, Coach Trustman, I talk to all my coaches, you know. But Brian Daboll was awesome. I think he's a phenomenal coach.
Brandon, we narrowed this down. It's a Dan Henning problem.
F that guy, right? F that guy, right?
Yeah. Wildcat ass. Get out of here.
Yeah, I had Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles was awesome. You know, and then I had McAdoo.
Yeah.
And then I had my last year I had Coach Carroll in Seattle.
I've noticed how you've said good things about all of them except for Dan Henning. Okay. Enough context clues for me.
Yeah, because this is some of the things I was dealing with. And this is why, like, when we talk about Antonio Brown, you know, this is why as athletes, we got to take the emotions out of the business and we have to understand the business, because if we're able to articulate ourselves, then I think we'll have more compassion. People will be more compassionate for us and they'll understand. And we may be able to push our agenda a little more. But I would walk into our team meeting. I walked into a meeting one time. They just signed me, you know, a big extension. I'm the highest paid wide receiver at the time, right? And Coach Henne in front of the team says, you know, the grass isn't always green on the other side. I told management, why y'all go out and make all these big free agent splashes? He's saying this to me. I mean, in front of the whole team, he's saying this. And I'm sitting there. Never really had a real conversation with this guy, right? And he's going off of what he heard from before. And that's it. That's the first thing. The second time, like I walk up into his office and I never really asked for the ball, you know, because I always, it was how I did it. Like I never did it how T.O. did it. Like I would look at T.O., I'll look at other receivers, and I don't even know T.O.'s story, so let me not just throw him in there. But I remember how the media portrayed T.O., you know, as this selfish guy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, all right, how do I not become that? So I walked up in Coach Henne's office, like, and this is my exact words. I said, Coach Henne, how can I help the team more? And in the way he talked to me, it was just unbelievable, right? And it was just this build up. So, you know, that's why I talk about Coach Henne there, because he had this thing for me. And then what ended up happening, I was just ticking time bomb, and then I would just explode. Like I'd be like, forget this damn game plan. I'm out of here. Beat it, right? And that's when Ricky Williams was like, yeah, we want to say those things. We see that, but don't do it that way. You know, Jason Taylor, I get you, but you got to come back in here. Don't do it that way. You're right, but don't do it that way.
Same thing you just got done telling Antonio Brown.
The same thing.
I know, it's funny. I know, I know, you've been there. You're like, Antonio, you want to shake him by the head. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate the time. Let's not wait so much time next time before doing it again.
All right, I'm going to come in the studio next time.
All right.
Yeah, we can all talk shit about Dan Henning together.
Yeah, together.
Bye.
We're going in the Wayback File here, Stugotz. Back when Knicks Heat against each other was something that mattered. You lived these years. I lived these years. New book, Blood in the Garden, The Flagrant History of the 1990s New York Knicks is available now. Chris Herring is the author. Thank you for joining us, Chris. I've got a lot of questions, but why write this period? You were very young during this period, so why did you decide to tackle this team and this time?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I think, after a 10-part documentary on, the champions from that era and, the best player maybe of all time, I think sometimes we forget how big a fascination there can be with the team that consistently kind of finishes second in eras. To this day, I think the most watched 30 for 30 is the one on the Fab Five, for starters. And, obviously they were culturally relevant in a different way. But I would make the argument, and it's not something that I would really even flinch while saying, I think the Knicks changed more about the way basketball would go on to be played than any team during that era. They were not the best team. They did not have the best player. We all know that. But this team was extremely relevant to the people in New York. I think the team was extremely relevant to the people in Miami for a different reason. But the league absolutely wanted to run as far away as they could from the way the Knicks were playing basketball. And, I think in some ways, when you take into account how relevant they were as far as the moments that they were a part of, the crazy Game 5 in '94 with the OJ chase happening, the back and forth between them and MJ. You look at, the stuff with Reggie Miller and Spike Lee. I describe them as kind of the Forrest Gump of that era, where they were never necessarily the team that was the focal point of what was happening, but they were always in the picture. They were always somehow tied to what was happening. And I think, they were very, very culturally relevant those years, not to mention the fact that the league changed a slew of rules because of them, because they didn't want the way they played basketball to influence everybody else. So that was why I did it.
Rank them for me and add somebody from the outside if someone is better. Top 3 characters in Knicks history from this time period.
Oh,
I'm going to say Oakley, Pat Riley, Anthony Mason.
Chris Childs.
Do you have a list that is different?
I'd put it in a different order. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I actually got asked this question. My literary agent at one point said, "Are you sure you want Pat Riley on the cover?" And I looked at him. I was like, what kind of question? Like, Pat Riley is the most important player, the most important person in that era, as far as I'm concerned. He only spent half of the era with the Knicks, but the other half they spent hating him for exactly the reason that he left. So Pat, to me, and he's literally mentioned on the first page, and he was a part of what they did even when he wasn't there anymore. So I think he's the central character in this book and the most important person in this book. I think, at least from an interest standpoint, I would say Anthony Mason is number 2. And then after that, I think Starks was really fascinating. I don't know if he was necessarily the most interesting. I mean, and not to knock him. I mean, the guy essentially has Kurt Warner's story, but, in basketball form. He was bagging groceries a few years before. He was on, the NBA final stage. He was a guy that went to 4 different colleges, who played 1 year, essentially 1 full year of high school basketball. So, I mean, his story was, I feel like I'm surprised we haven't seen a Lifetime movie on his story, since we've got a full movie on Kurt Warner's story and, and something like that. So I would say either him or maybe you could point to Oakley. I'm not sure which one I would take, but I'd probably lean towards Starks, quite frankly.
Kurt Warner's story a little more gentle than John Starks telling a beat reporter, "I'm going to cut Reggie Miller's dick off and make him eat it."
I'd agree with that. You probably have to. Maybe that's why it's not the Lifetime movie. Why it wasn't made into.
Well, and Kurt won a Super Bowl. I mean, Starks won 2 of 18.
John
Yes.
potentially lost them a final. So you're right. You're right.
Easier to tell that story. Do you have a better story on John Starks or about John Starks than telling a beat reporter, quote, "I'm going to cut Reggie Miller's dick off and make him eat it," end quote?
Well, better is subjective. I've had one story on him. Pat Riley is, and this is why he was a central character. There are just so many detours and random things and crazy things that he said during that era and did. One of them, and I think he later did something like this with Miami. I remember hearing a story like this from one of the Heat players I interviewed. Pat took them, whenever the team would slump, I feel like he would try to do something to try to get them out of a rut. And so, they had a 4-game losing streak, which to that point in '94 was the longest skid they'd had under Pat. Pat takes them to Reno, for 36 hours, kind of unannounced and unexpected. He's about to make a big lineup shift where he's going to switch out 3 of his starters. And so he wanted to kind of do something to soften that blow. He takes them to Reno in the middle of a West Coast trip, and he gives each of the players $500 and chips. And so John Starks, from what I was told, was the first person to blow through his 500. But John, and I go into this in depth in the book, he was someone that could never just kind of accept faltering. And so he would just kind of dig deeper and deeper and deeper until he could get out the other side. So he dug into his own pockets after he blew through the 500 in the span of an hour or two. And he eventually got to such a hot streak at the craps table that when the rest of the team was out on the bus ready to make the trip to Sacramento, they took attendance, and John was the only one that was not in his seat on the bus, or not on the bus at all. They were ready to leave, and the team trainer, the team, traveling secretary, Mike Saunders, had to go find John somewhere in the casino because he was still gambling, trying to get out of the hole, or, just he was on such a hot streak that he wasn't ready to leave. And that Mike Saunders told me I had to literally drag John out of the casino because we had to leave. And so that was just kind of who John was.
Will Pat Riley like the book?
I don't know. Someone from the Heat who's tied to the Heat said, first of all, Chris, this book is great. I can't stop flipping through it and can't stop reading these anecdotes. But, I'm going to send you one. I want you to sign it out to Pat. And that was my first question is, are you sure Pat wants a copy of this book? It tells the story, I think, very accurately. I certainly made every effort to get Pat for this book. I went to Pat's hometown for the better part of a week, where he grew up in upstate New York in Schenectady, spent time at his house where he spent time as a child, spent a lot of time with the people from his childhood and from his playing days, college days, everything. What I would say, the reason that the person that wanted me to sign a book to Pat said he thought that Pat would like it, he was like, it reads as crazy to you and it will read as crazy to most people. But I think Pat kind of knows who he is and knows that he's wound the way he's wound, and that that he's different, and that a lot of us can't relate with being that competitive to the point where we're going to tell our boss, no, you can't get this color car. Your wife can't buy this color car for the family because that forest green represents the Celtics and red represents the Bulls. So she has to get a blue Chevy Suburban. I can't relate with that, but Pat knows that that's how he is, and that he's that in or out as it relates to loyalty and betrayal and everything else. Pat knows that he wants to get the messaging across to his players to watch Rams headbutt each other and watch car crashes in a pregame setting to get them ready to go play a really good offensive Portland team. I can't relate with that. I never needed that sort of motivation to go play hard defense, but Pat, if he needs to get that messaging across, it's all stuff that he knows more or less, and I don't think that he shies away from. So to me, I didn't think it was necessarily like the sweetest portrayal, but Pat probably doesn't really see himself as a sweet person when it relates to his coaching. But I think it's a fair portrayal, and I think it's who he is. So it's funny. I don't think of it as being like the nicest portrayal, but I'm also not Pat Riley, and the stuff he would be offended by is probably different than the way I would worry about offending someone with writing it.
Who won't like the book? Like, you don't need to wait for a reaction. You just know because you wrote it, they're not going to like this.
Jim Dolan is probably one. And I barely even really get into it with him, but it's just the story kind of tells itself on some level. They were really great during those years. And then shortly after the book ends, they were really horrible. And I essentially let people kind of connect the dots on their own that, that Jim Dolan came in and immediately made it known that he wanted to make changes. That first full season he's involved as the owner, basically with 8 games to go and that 50-game season, that lockout shortened season, orders that Dave Checkins, the team president, has to fire Ernie Grunfeld with 8 games left, even though they're still in the thick of the playoff race and have a chance to make the playoffs. He makes the decision. They fire Ernie Grunfeld. They go 6-2 over those last 8 games to snag the last playoff spot. And then they went to the NBA Finals from the 8 seed. Still the only team to ever do that. They obviously knocked off Miami with that Allen Houston shot that year to do it. But the way that everybody's kind of told it to me is like, well, what do you think that had, as far as impact on Dolan? It emboldened him to think that every time he pulled the lever, he was making the right move. So, from that point, they essentially was a downhill slide for them after that. And very little has gone right since Patrick Ewing has left the organization. And a lot of that, I think you have to leave at Dolan's feet. I don't go into every last detail about it because to me, it was a lot more interesting to write about the 90s when they were good and let you draw your own conclusions about what changed when they were bad. But I think it's pretty clear that Dolan was that change.
Do you chronicle Charles Oakley slapping everybody?
If not, it should be your next book.
Yeah, a lot of the slapping, man, happened after Oak left the Knicks. And there was some of it during that lockout season. But my favorite Oakley anecdote, man, I have one anecdote in there about him punching the crap out of Paul Silas when he was Oakley's assistant coach with the Knicks. And Paul Silas remembering that he had bruises and welts for like 2-3 weeks after that. But
and Silas was not someone to be trifled with. Other people feared Silas plenty.
He was one of the Oakleys of that era, so my favorite Oakley stories, I guess I would say, he had normally people see me as a numbers person, and obviously this book takes me way out of that realm. I'm not doing that in this book, but Oakley in 93, when you talk about why the Knicks were so influential in changing the rules, Oakley had more flagrant fouls by himself than 15 other teams in one season in 93. And he also had more than twice as many as any player during that year. And then that was when the league said, okay, maybe it's time for us to start putting a threshold as far as how many you can have before we suspend you. So there was that. But the thing with Oakley that makes me laugh still, he loved to gamble. And it just shouldn't be that big of a surprise. He came up with Michael Jordan and those Chicago years. And, so he loved to gamble by the time he got to New York. He was one of the more highly paid guys on that team. So he had more money to gamble. He'd bring $50,000 in cash on each trip to bring in his leather duffel bag. But he would get really frustrated when his younger teammates that weren't earning the same amount of money would complain, man, I can't join you for these high stakes games. I just don't have it. Like, I've got my per diem and that's about it. So Oak would start getting tired of that excuse. And eventually what he did by the time that the team got to about 97, and this was a story from Chris Childs. So, shout out to Chris for giving me this. He said at a certain point, Oak finally just went out and he bought one of those credit card imprint machines so that guys wouldn't have an excuse that they didn't have enough cash to gamble with us anymore. So he would start having guys gamble on credit, and he would essentially make them pay a 10% penalty for using his imprint machine. But that was Charles Oakley for you. He loved to gamble. He wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of him having, time to gamble with his teammates on the plane.
True or false, Anthony Mason once left a note for Don Nelson, the coach, in his office that read, "If you fucking take me out of a game again, I'll kill you."
Oh, no.
True. True. And I think that the most important part about the truth, which, is enough on its own, Anthony Mason was leading the league in minutes that season. So it wasn't as if, Don Nelson had an axe to grind from the standpoint that, that's where we talk about why the characters are ranked ordered in the way I put them. That's why I put Mason at the top, because I'm like, wait a minute. Anthony Mason, a guy that was a sixth man the year before that, led not the team, the league in minutes. And the game that I'm pretty sure he was pulled out of that he had a problem with. I think he played. I think he played like 38 minutes in that game, and he did not play well. And so that was why, it was like he played plenty. He played plenty that year, played more than anybody that year, but left that note for Don Nelson. And Don Nelson got the note, and he's like, what the hell? Like, I'm playing you a ton, and you're still coming at me this way. And it kind of put him in a catch-22 because Don Nelson did not have control over his team that year. He ended up losing his job after 59 games. And so he's just kind of like, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. I play the guy this much, he's still complaining.
Is that your favorite Mason story, or is there another?
No. There's so many with Mace, man. I mean, I'd have to pick one, but I mean, the next tell pages that he gave his boys when they wanted to go out for the night and wanted to, have a fun night out to arrange their plans. But Mason, because he's bought the pagers, having the information that he has and the PIN numbers for them, they would go out and have competitions to see who could get the most women's numbers that night. But Mason had back-end access to the phone, so when his friends got the numbers, he would steal the numbers and then change their voicemail greetings to make them sound gay when the women actually called them. So that story, and then this is probably the one that takes the cake for me. It's in the epilogue. Mace, you remember, the way these camps work, these summer camps where, the team makes $1 bajillion off of them because they charge a couple $100 a head. And then they have one player come out and maybe sign autographs and just kind of scrimmage with the kids to make it enjoyable from that standpoint. So Mace is the guy they pick because he's, again, like a sixth man, a bench guy. in that first inaugural, Knicks summer camp. They bring him, he comes out, and they get him a limo. They tell him that they'll pay him $1,500 for appearing. He shows up, the limo pulls up, the kids are thrilled because it's, there's a player in their midst. But Mason will not get out of the limo. It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And finally, the administrative director comes out. Ed Tapscott, a guy that would later become their GM. He says, Mace, why haven't you gotten out of the limo? And he says, I'm not getting out. He says, what the hell? Why are you not getting out? We agreed to this. These kids are in here waiting for you. They've seen you at this point. And Mace said, well, that's not really my problem. I'll get out, but you need to make it $2,000 and you need to make it cash today. And Ed Tapscott says, like, how am I even supposed to get you that much cash today? Like, I don't know how you guys roll. Dan, you're probably in a different tax bracket than me, but I don't think we can get that much money out of an ATM today. I just don't think it works that way. So anyway, he says, I don't even know how I'm supposed to get that much cash. He's like, again, that's not my problem, but I'm telling you, I'm not getting out of the car for anything less than that.
He's like Aretha Franklin. She distrusted people so much that she demanded that they pay in cash because record companies were thieves. Mason is saying, I'm not doing charity unless you give me a handful of cash.
But that's how you do it. You do it when you pull up, okay, and all the kids are waiting, and someone's got to go get them the cash.
Leverage.
Right. Yes,
leverage, right? So that's what he says. He says, fine, Mace, like, I'll find a way to do it. Just please come in here. The kids have seen you already. That's the leverage. So Mace gets out with a big smile on his face. He goes in to play with the kids and, watch the kids mostly. But he's scrimmaging with them, and Mace had no ability to turn it off. One time he clotheslined his son the day of his graduation in a game that they're playing 2-11. On the game point, he clotheslined his son to make sure he wouldn't win. But in this moment, in that camp, he ended up inadvertently elbowing a kid in the nose. The kid's nose is broken. He's out cold. And so everybody's freaking out at the camp. The Knicks are petrified of a potential lawsuit. But the kid finally wakes up. He comes to. His nose is crooked. Mace is hovered over him to make sure he's okay. And then the kid smiles and asks Mace if he can have an autograph. So that's the way the camp ends. But then as Mace is getting his payment at the end of it, the one that he's haggled for, if you could even call it that, I guess it's not haggling when you demand it. He then takes the money and says, well, thanks for this. The reason I wanted the extra $500, I'm going to have the limo driver take my mom shopping after I get home. So thanks for this and bye. And, just heads out. And that was kind of the story about how difficult he could be to deal with. He had been with the team for 1 year, and by no means was he like a star at this point. He had not accomplished much, but he was just a difficult guy to deal with, but a guy that most guys came to love at a certain point.
Pat Riley once ejected him or suspended him, and he ended up being, during a practice or something, in the audience of the Ricky Lake show where he was supposed to be someplace else. Who were the greatest clashers on that team? Because Pat Riley's style was confrontational and aggressive, and that team was confrontational and aggressive.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anybody that Riley kind of got into it more than Mace. He suspended him twice, actually, both at the end of the season. The first time, the suspension was kind of so polarizing for everybody because it was right before the playoffs started, and Pat was going to leave him off the playoff roster until essentially Pat's two bosses, Ernie Grunfeld and Dave Checketts, stepped in and said, you can't leave this guy off the playoff roster because we're going to get smoked. He's our best versatile, like all-around player. He's probably our best guy. So I don't even think it's a question that it was those two. There was, though, I'll say that there was a clash that I make a point of making a little bit of a bigger deal about, mostly because the players did. 94, we all know about John Starks going 2 for 18 in that finals game 7 in 94 against the Rockets. And there was one instance in which Pat, 2.5 weeks before that game, had kind of gotten into it a little bit with Rolando Blackman, a guy that had mostly out of the rotation. But, for people that don't know it, to this day, I think he's second all-time in Mavericks scoring history. Dirk is the only guy that's outscored him. So at this time, he was the leading scorer in Mavs history. He was a guy that played most of his career with the Mavs, who had just dominated the Rockets throughout his career, and that the Rockets were petrified of him. He and Pat had a disagreement where Rolando basically asked him right after that Pacers win that put the Knicks in the finals, and none of these Knicks players had ever won a championship before. I don't think any of them had been to the finals before. Rolando asked Pat in front of the whole team, can we bring our wives to Houston for the beginning of the series? Pat says no. And again, Pat is someone that is very much in or out, down to even, as I said before, the color of what your car is. So then Rolando says, I don't understand, Pat. And Rolando's a respected veteran on this team. He says, our wives have held down our households all year. None of us have ever accomplished anything like this before. This is a huge moment for us. We want to share it with them. Are you really telling me we can't bring our wives? And Pat, again, just left it as a no. Like, he didn't really explain. He said they're a distraction, and he left it at that. But the players were all kind of taken aback at the fact that not only Pat was very rarely challenged like that, certainly in front of a group, but two, that Pat was kind of so short with Rolando. So Rolando didn't play at all during the finals. Again, he wasn't a big rotation guy. He got minutes here and there. But when John shoots 2 for 18 and everybody's looking around for who he could possibly replace Starks with, Rolando is the first guy the Rockets are concerned about, but Rolando never got off the bench. And everybody from Rolando himself to Doc to Charles Oakley's got a book coming out in a couple of weeks, and he mentions this detail as well. Derek Harper, all of them are of the opinion that that might have played a role in why Pat didn't use Rolando Blackman in that series. And to that point, Pat has called it, if not the biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes in his career. And he's written letters to Rolando over the years, handwritten letters that, I'm not sure if you would call them outright apologies, but Rolando has said that he's never taken the time to write back to Pat. So they clashed over that. I don't think it was the biggest clash Pat ever had. I think those were with Mason, but that was one that I do think had a role in something much bigger later on.
Fat Joe says that Biggie Smalls, I got a story to tell that's about Anthony Mason. Did you get to the bottom of that? Did you find those details?
I tried. And Dan, I love you, man. I've been saying this to people. First of all, before I answer it completely, I will say, I want people to fully appreciate how challenging a question that is to ask, because on the one hand, you could ask Mace's boys confided in me that, like, Mace slept with some of the wives of his teammates, which I think is a pretty big reveal, multiple teammates. But I want people to fully appreciate that, like, to potentially get to the complete and whole truth of this, that you can't really rely on Mace's boys. You have to ask the women that Mace was with, basically, like, did you have Biggie hide in the closet, more or less? What were you screwing around on Anthony? So it's a difficult question to ask, which I did. I did ask them. Each of them said no. I did ask Mace's boys, because Mace obviously was bragging about sleeping with the wives of teammates. So, naturally he would have told them about this. Maybe it's not something you're as proud of, but you would probably tell them about this if you were willing to tell them about the other stuff. And a couple people told me yes, but the people that I trusted most told me he never told me that, and he would have told me that. So I don't think it was him, honestly. But I could be wrong on that. But I certainly asked, even down to the women, which, like I said, someone that he was engaged to. I asked her and other people. So hopefully people can realize that it's a really awkward thing to ask, but I did ask, and I never got a clear sense. And I don't think it happened, but I never got a clear sense.
What kind of problems did Mace sleeping with teammates' wives cause?
I never got to the bottom of that. I'm also not sure that they knew. I didn't make the point of naming who these people were, just because, in some cases, you're talking about current stuff. And so it's not, I didn't see a need to do it, but I don't think it was out there. And if it was, it certainly wasn't something that I heard about. So I got the impression very clearly that it was not out there previously, and still is not out there.
New book, Blood in the Garden, The Flagrant History of the 90s New York Knicks, is available now. He did it exhaustively. It is a ton of sources, and it's a bunch of questions. Chris, thank you so much for making the time for us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Chris.